Happy August 1st to you. It is Tuesday. I am George. First full show I'm doing from the saddle right here, not only in August, but really in a week. The last time I did this, I think, was a week ago Monday before I took off for my travel from hell trip to a really great place. If you didn't listen to the end of the show yesterday, you just don't get to know where I went last week. It's bittersweet to reveal it because, of course, I'm always proud of what I do in uniform on behalf of the country. But it's really a lot tougher to express it in terms of real sacrifice when you go back and listen to that podcast to hear where I was yesterday at the end of the show. In fact, when I say at the end of the show, I mean with seconds left for the end of the show to help you cue it up. Hey, I'm going to be with you here all morning. That is 6 to 10 a.m. I get replaced by Chuck Kirk at 11. But before that, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. A little spoiler alert here. At 8 o'clock, we're going to have a special guest on something that is super topical, very current eventsy, and has a big thing coming up this weekend on it. In the meantime, today, I see a cloud with lightning bolts shooting out of it. It's very Flash or Shazam looking. 84 degree is the high. Someone cut and pasted that exact same icon onto Wednesday. Same prediction. Thursday, a bit of sun peeking around behind the Shazam symbol. Few PM storms, 88 degrees. Friday, same thing, 87. And then Saturday and Sunday, rain. By the way, I don't know which part of the metro area or parts beyond you were in last night, but something happened around, was it 7-ish or something in Douglas County in that Parker Castle Rock area as I was driving up I-25. The heavens just unleashed a deluge. Billy, did you get hit by rain out there in the hood?
Yeah, we got some. Not a ton,
just
but
some?
We got some. Yeah. Not a deluge, but yeah, we got
it. Was crazy. Like, wow. I had to stop off at the post office and I broke out the umbrella. I never do that. Normally I'm just, because I feel a little dainty with the umbrella. It's there in the car for other people, of course, but I felt like, well, I better grab this thing because it was torrential. And I was grabbing some Mexican food on the way home. A great little place there off of like Castle Pines and I-25. And the rain was oppressive. I mean, people were coming in from the walks from their car, maybe 20 feet. And it looked like they had been crushed with a shower. Maybe it's just our part of the area, but holy smoke. So when Saturday and Sunday has cooler with storms and showers and storms listed, 79 and 73, expect some moisture. If you thought you were going to do a big run on Sunday because you're desperately trying to lose some weight so you can run in a big race at the end of October, that's less than 3 months from now. You better do it in the morning is my guess on Sunday because you're not going to get a chance to do it later in the day. Monday, it says partly cloudy, no thunderbolts, no rain. Nonetheless, that's the weekly predictions. As you know, everything past day 3, according to our good friend Lisa Hidalgo from 7, is just made up. It's just completely fake. In terms of what's going on in the area, Billy, I know that there's a lot taking place. I'm not, and you're not. We're not sports talk show guys. You could probably do a whole show on soccer and that kind of football. But yeah, when the thing I hear lead off the story is Tim Patrick is gone for another season from the Broncos, I'm like, well, here we go.
Yeah, we go again.
Here we go. Dude was just gone for a torn ACL, and now he's ruptured an Achilles. Been there, done that, by the way, and he's gone for the season. If you ask me, I feel like Tim's probably done as a Bronco. It's not blaming him. It's just they've now spent jillions of dollars on this guy to basically walk around at practice and sit on the sideline. So,
it's awful because that is one of the things as far as being a professional athlete, it's availability. And that can be the number one detriment to your career is you can be the wonderfulest player on the field, but if you're not on the field, the coach can't count on you. And there are a number of professional athletes' careers that have been cut short simply because of that. One of the ones that we can talk about here locally, again, he was never a great superstar, but did he have the potential to be a very good player? It'd be LaFonso Ellis with the Denver Nuggets. That's a guy who availability killed his career because of his knees. And that's happened over and over and over again and this could be the end of Tim Patrick because if you're not available, it's very difficult. Who was the guy that we got, that we paid all the money for, and then he decided he didn't like playing football? Juwan James, was that him? No.
Oh, I can't remember.
I don't remember, but it was a lineman that we overpaid for.
Yeah,
and
we do that a lot.
Yeah, and he didn't really have any desire. There was no fire in the belly to actually be a professional football player. However,
get the contract.
He loved cashing the checks. Thought that was fantastic.
I do too.
Exactly.
I tried to do the same thing with the radio, but they keep making me come in here.
Exactly.
I didn't get a signing bonus, Billy. I don't know if you did when you came on board. Didn't get one.
They gave me a lollipop.
The other one, though, that you look at two examples that come to mind. I think it's Wally Pipp, who was a former first baseman for the New York Yankees, had a little bit of a head injury or headache or something, sat it out, and never played first base again for the Yankees because the great Lou Gehrig, the Iron Horse, played for the next 2,000 plus games. And how about Drew Bledsoe?
Yep, exactly.
Drew Bledsoe, vaunted, legit quarterback. He was the number one guy by a mile, goes down with an injury, and then all of a sudden they're going into the playoffs behind a kid named Tom Brady. Game over.
Yeah, Bledsoe doesn't play.
No, never. I don't know that he ever started again. I can't remember if Brady got hurt, but that's it. So Tim Patrick, I know it's not quite the same thing, but when you're gone off the field and off the depth chart, it just makes room for someone else for us to forget about you. So,
yeah, and ACL is difficult. That's a really tough thing to come back from.
Well, that was the one last year, and he made it back.
Yeah.
The ACL.
Sorry, this is Achilles.
Yeah, this is Achilles.
Yeah, that's what you know that one very intimately.
And I still have freakishly disproportionate calves. They're not symmetrical. Like one is the calf of a real man. The other one is the calf of my 13-year-old son, Graham. You know what I mean? Like there's just something wrong there. Also, I don't know that we have the Stephen Tubbs queued up happy birthday music, but big birthday today.
Big birthday. Whose?
Our state, my friend, 147 years young. It is Colorado Day. Congratulations. I don't know what great things are going on out there. I'm sure there's free admission at all of the museum related to Colorado history. All those other things are going on, but happy birthday, my friend. 147 years.
That wasn't it. Isn't it March? I thought March 3rd was Colorado Day, 303.
I think that's the day that we found out we were pregnant with Colorado. This was actually the birthday.
This is the birthday. Okay, good.
Very, very different. It was a little preemie, but I think that was the reveal date.
Yes, the gender reveal party.
We popped a balloon and out came Colorado. I don't know what color that is. Some version of red, yellow, and blue. But it's a big day. Do you think you'll do anything special to celebrate?
No. No, not at all.
I love your candor.
Oh, thank you.
I don't have any plans either. If they sell some Colorado themed cookies, maybe I buy some for the kids. I don't know, but I don't really have plans for it. I don't know what government does to celebrate its existence. You know, our little governmental culture here, 147 years. I presume we will make RTD free. Oh no, we've already done that.
Yeah, we've already done that.
We shot that wad. There's nothing else we can do there. What else can we give away for free? You know what we can do is based on Tabor. You know, you're supposed to get back a certain amount of tax money based on how much you paid in. There's these 60. Maybe we can just make them all one level so that regardless of how much you paid in, you get these. Nope, we've already done that too. Damn.
You know what we could do? Maybe Phil Weiser could come out and have a declaration that everybody gets one free misdemeanor today. Or whatever it is.
He's already declared
I know.
3 or 4 stolen cars in a 3-month period.
I'm just saying, this is kind of going the extra mile, saying,
you know what? While we're here, maybe you reach out to his spokesperson who has gotten shorter and shorter with the responses and just say, listen, in honor of Colorado Day, would you be willing to come on the show? And Billy has turned immediately to the email. He's going to crank that one out. I wonder if we'll get a response. I know Phil's not listening, but if you work for Phil and you listen to this show, and I get it, I get why you would, then please pass this up the chain and say, hey, boss's boss, if Phil is in the metro area, he spends a lot of time on his pre-gubernatorial campaign outside the metro area. Like I saw something the other day, which was a social media post where he's like, let's meet in Montrose to talk about mental health. And I'm like, wait, are you the public health officer or the attorney general? And so I pushed back on social media with that. All the typical people you can imagine coming to his aid, including, of course, one of the big producers at 9 News, also shot in with a very short, Phil is in charge of some such thing or something. He provides legal advice for some such thing. And I'm like, whoa. Under that logic, Phil should be traveling around the state talking about things like education and he should go around and talk about things like water conservation. I mean, there's no limit to what the guy can talk about because he is in charge of providing legal advice to every executive branch agency out there. In fact, every part of state government except the legislature. I mean, that's just garbage talk to think that this is under his purview. And then someone said, well, mental health is directly related to crime. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, but the attorney general isn't. So, I mean, what we know is that guy's not directly related to crime. He campaigned on the idea that it was worth about a fingernail's worth of his effort. But nonetheless, let's see if we can get, based on that right there, I'm sure Phil will rush to the phone to get on. I don't intend to be disrespectful to Phil. I'm not really disrespectful to anybody. I am interested, however, in having a conversation with him about really anything he wants to talk about, a whole host of things. I'm kind of interested to know what's going to happen with the Elijah McClain cases. I don't know where they are anymore. We've seen, but I've lost track of them. Media stops focusing on those. I'm interested to know where those things are going to end up as well. A poll that I saw, this could be something we later talk about here, but this one hit me right in the heart. It is I think it's a Gallup poll, and they poll institutions, public institutions, and they do it every year, and they've done it forever. And it has come out and said that the United States, through this poll, confidence in the military is at decades low right here. It hasn't been lower than this since 1997. And frankly, if you go back, it's about at where it was in 1988. And that is after having significant support through most of our foreign engagements. I'd say there's a period of time there between 2005, 2010, where it dropped to about 70%, 69%, but it has hovered in the 70s to 80s and north of that. It is down to 60% right now. That's a tough one. Even Republican confidence, and when they do these polls, of course, they break them down by ideological commitment to Republicans. And I'm so tired of seeing the phrase independents, because they're not independent of anything. They're just unaffiliated. Republicans unaffiliated and Democrats. And even Republican support has dropped, and precipitously. Listen to this. This is from the Gallup article. Throughout nearly all of the past 48 years, Republicans have been the most likely to express confidence in the military, and they remain so today. But the rate has declined by over 20 percentage points in 3 years, from 91% to 68%. With unaffiliated, it's just dropped 13%. And now unaffiliateds have less confidence in the military than Democrats do. Interestingly, by the way, Democrats' confidence in the military rose right after President Joe Biden assumed office, but those gains have disappeared. I don't know why this is, Billy. I mean, not that you were polled for this, but man, and they're using a picture here from 100 years ago, because this uniform, we haven't used this particular kind of uniform in a long time. What's going on?
I don't know, but a couple of things. In my opinion, there have been a lot of, I guess, machinations by Republicans against government institutions, and that bleeds over into the military. We see it on the show. People call in and they don't believe the CIA, the FBI. They think that the deep state's working against them. That
that's interesting, man.
And then that's what I think part of it is I think it's just a wider breadth of distrust of all government institutions. And in my opinion, that is a feeling that has been sowed without a lot of facts behind it. It's based on feelings. It's based on they're doing things we don't like, so they must be doing something to persecute us. And we see that with the callers, and we listen to them. And that's a lot of what they say. They don't come in with the proof of any of the allegations, just a lot of the allegations. And I think that's the distrust. I mean, it's one of the things we've talked about that's been the most surprising to me in the last 5 years has been the people that held the rallies to back the blue now say the FBI should be defunded.
Oh, I know.
They're saying the same things that the BLM people were saying. And that's where I think we're getting is, and look at things like what Tuberville is doing and blocking the promotions for a lot of the higher end military members, and that hurts our readiness in a number of areas. We have them throwing rocks at the policies inside of the military. And how many times have we heard that the military has gone woke? How many times have we heard that?
You know what? Maybe that's part of it too.
I think that's part of it.
The military's gone woke.
Yes, which again, nobody's been able to define that for us. Nobody has been able to come forward and tell us why the military's woke, and then two, how that hurts readiness and how that impacts our ability to effectively be the best fighting force this earth has ever seen. And I haven't seen anybody show us that. In fact, the military members that I've had interactions with prior to this whole war on woke always lean into the diversity being a strength. Yeah. They always leaned into it saying, listen, I'm serving on this ship, and you will not believe the number of people that we have from different states and all the different people I'm hanging out with. And this is incredible. This is so cool. And I have people, I'm serving on base. And this guy that's my best friend is a dude I'd never run into. We talked to our very own, he filled in for Stefan yesterday, Peter Boyles. He talks about the idea that that one of the first times he actually hung out and had good, long conversations with a black guy was when he was serving as a private next to another private that was black in the military. That's when he had that exposure of diversity. And he thought it was a good thing. It wasn't a negative at that time. And he said he learned a lot of things about it and a lot of perspective on it. And so
that's what Pete said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Normally you don't, it's awkward when you get your privates together. You know what I mean? Normally, just because
normally,
you don't want to.
Especially not
something
Snapchat.
I've noticed, and again, some folks may try to fit it under that umbrella of woke. I'm not really sure entirely what that means in this context, but some of what has taken place is it's just difference in appearance. Like, for instance, we have made a decision to move away from certain hair standards for women, if we're still allowed to call them women. Some of them are cultural in nature. So, for instance, African-American women have hair that is less conducive to like putting up in a bun and sticking under a hat and all this other stuff. So we have changed our standards with that. And it is visible and it is obvious. We have also changed our standards regarding facial hair, largely for religious reasons, but we also have shaving profiles. That too is a reflection of, and again, this was stark. I saw a dude, I don't know, sergeant in formation a couple years ago or something, full beard and mustache. And I wanted to be like, are you special forces? Because the rules never apply to those guys. But it was clear that this guy was on some sort of a religious exemption. That's different, a religious exemption. But we have exemptions now, shaving profiles, based on the fact that African-American men, a lot of males, have skin that is so irritated by shaving all the time. It's a legitimate hardship. And so a friend of mine, a guy I went through war college with, he's a colonel in the Air Force, works in the White House. Take that for what you will. I'm fairly certain DB is left of me, but I will also say this. I have no doubt that that guy gets up every morning thinking about how to make America great. I just don't have any doubt about that. But he did a study along with some other folks out there that showed that because we have this shaving profile thing, all of these African-American officers, men, appear to have lower promotion rates based on the photograph that is attached, because they have the photograph of them in the uniform like everybody else, but they have that shadow or the growth or whatever. And so they are now moving towards, if not the entire military with the Air Force, of moving away from promotion files, including photographs. There's good and there's bad about that, but I get that. And so all of these things, I think from a distance, you'd look at them and go, man, what's happening to the standards? I even asked that. But if you ask the questions, why are we doing this? What is the reason for doing this? Because the military is very much like, this is how we've always done it kind of a thing. There are legit answers that are disconnected from some sort of political ideology and, you know, more focused on something else that's not only pragmatic, but I think probably morale enhancing, at least for those that get the benefit of that thing.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you talked about the pictures and the promotions. I would say that's not shocking at all, because that's what you find universally when hiring and promoting inside of organizations. We hire and promote people that look like us. and people that we're comfortable with. And so a higher level officer that would not have had the benefit of being able to have a beard or some sort of facial hair will view that picture as someone that's not like me, someone that doesn't follow the same rules as me. So I'm not going to promote that person because I cannot trust their decision making. That is not surprising at all. That is 110% what I would guess would happen with those pictures.
It hurts me with the promotions because I like to, in my Department of the Army photo, I like to give the smoldering look. You know, that very Zoolander kind of look, you know, and I think you're blue steel. It works. And now I don't get to do that anymore.
That's tough.
We don't do the damn photographs. Funny. There's an entire industry wiped out by us moving away from those DA photos too, because there's at least one cat on the base who is there. At one point, it involved tape. Sticks up your sleeve and all these things and then when we went to digital, it was to try to so they keep putting in more and more rules that are like, and you can't touch up this and you can't do that and you can. And now we've just decided, oh hell, let's just move away from the photos. It forces you to look at the dimensions of the person, height and weight, and that doesn't give you the full story either. I mean, you're looking for people who have turned their uniform into a maternity top, and you can't really get to see that anymore because that's legit.
Oh, that's fine.
The other things about this poll, though, military still one of the most highly regarded. It's number 2 to small business, which I found really interesting. I think that's kind of cool.
That is interesting.
This one kicks me right in the neck, too. The police are number 3 at 51% in 2021. They've dropped to 45% in 2022. But you have to go down to the criminal justice system because, folks, I ain't police, but I was criminal justice system. It's at 14%.
Ooh.
But it is only one. It is really only 3 points above TV news.
That's fantastic.
And 7 points above Congress.
Oh, that's awful.
I mean, when you are only twice as popular as Congress, what have you done? Congress has now dropped to 7 points. This is just in 1 year, dropped from 12 to 7. So,
and well deserved is that.
I don't know what's going on there. Large tech companies, they've barely moved. Organized labor, interestingly, has held steady at 28% approval. Public schools have taken a little dip, but they're still at about that 30% level. Church has fallen down to about 31%. Medical system is right below the police. So on the one hand, I'm like, oh, hey, the police, they've dropped some, but still doing well. And then I look at the criminal justice system and think, oh, hell, how much of this is related to not what you see coming out of our courts here, but the national perception driven by all the Trump stuff, the January 6th stuff, the perceived lack of prosecution of the Biden stuff. It seems to me that the criminal justice system up and down gets pummeled by the political cases.
Absolutely. And part of the problem I think that we have is that we want the criminal justice system to enforce the laws many times based on our politics.
Yeah,
and I think that's a problem. Yeah, it is, because it depends on, here's the idea. And I know this is difficult, but think about a Second Amendment case. Depending on if you are a conservative or a liberal, you are going to want to see a Second Amendment case prosecuted differently. And that's going to be vastly different. If you have let's say a protest case, and
buddy, I had this.
Yeah, BLM.
Yeah, I had this.
You're going to look at this and you're going to want to see it prosecuted vastly different, and you're going to influence and you're going to filter that through your own politics, and that's going to influence how you feel about it. And I think that's a problem. Is we're not accurately judging the criminal justice system. We're judging it based on our fifis, and I think that's a problem.
That I lived it there. Do you remember the Jeep that purportedly tried to run over hundreds of these BLM style protesters in the post? Yeah. And dude shot at them and all that stuff. And we investigated the hell out of that thing. And at the end of the day, my conclusion was I cannot prove a crime for this guy. And I don't think I stood any chance of winning. So I had this big couple-hour press release, all this other press conference about it, and invited the press to the Arapahoe Sheriff's Office and did it. And that one was ridiculous, man. I'm telling you, the folks on the left were like, Brauchler, just because it's the then. I'm like, it wouldn't have mattered to me if it was pro-life protesters. You spill out onto 225. One, you're inviting some risk, but two, this guy, in my mind, his name escapes me now. He and his buddy were on the way to the airport. They were going to take that 225 up to I-70, to get to Pena and all that. And so these BLM types had like something out of Mad Max, had folks on motorcycle that were trying to shut down the on-ramps to 225.
Yeah.
Now, without ever talking to this guy, because he lawyered up, and I get why he did. I get it, man. This dude and his buddy were like, screw you. We're not going to let some goof on a motorcycle keep us from getting on the highway. It wasn't police. No, so he just hops on the highway.
You have no right to prevent me from getting on this road.
You can just tell it was just Mr. Cocky guy in a Jeep. And so he hops on the 225 and starts speeding down the road thinking, this is great, man. Nobody's here. And then as he comes up over this slight hill, looks at, I think, what appears to be the pre-parting of the sea scene from Moses, and is like,
oh,
and
God.
People start throwing things at the car, running and hitting the car with guitars and bags and screaming at him. And I think this guy is thinking, I'm going to die. If I stop, I'm going to die. So he doesn't accelerate through them. He doesn't steer towards anyone, quite the opposite. And then some dude, some freak show who brought a gun to a protest,
which is always a great idea.
Just like,
that's always wonderful,
on, buddy.
Yeah.
And took some shots, of course, at the Jeep, hit two other protesters. The politics of these protesters were such, they didn't even want this guy prosecuted. One dude got shot in a way that it should have killed him, hit him in the head, should have taken his head off, but because of just the distance, another dude. And they were like, we don't want him prosecuted. We want the Jeep prosecuted. He was just defending us. I'm like, he had already passed. The Jeep had already passed this guy. Long story. Anyway, the people on the left came out and said this was all based on politics. Brauchler's a kooky Republican, blah, blah. And I'm like, this couldn't have had less to do with politics. I would have loved to have prosecuted this guy. I don't care why you were on 225 other than to say, it was against the law for you to be on 225.
Yes,
I mean, that was that.
The conversation I had with the people that were supporting the protesters on 225 is, how many people are you allowing to be on the road until the traffic is supposed to stop and give them right away? Because if it's one of you, the traffic still hits you and it's your fault. And again, the car is responsible for moving out of the way of the pedestrian, but you don't get to walk across 225 or I-25 wherever you want. If it's two of you, still, no, not okay. Three of you, not okay. 4 of you, not okay. 100 of you, still not okay. That's the thing. It's not okay for you to walk across the highway. Doesn't matter how many of those people you have with you.
Billy, I
still
think
not okay.
You're missing something, and that is they are super emotional and sincere in their beliefs. And as you know, if you're super sincere, and it's an important point you're making,
and if you believe hard enough,
the law is irrelevant.
That's true.
It doesn't matter. Yes, you could have sought a permit from Aurora to shut down a whole bunch of roads for your stuff. But you decided you wanted to hijack an interstate, and then you wanted to play victim when some dude enters this. It was almost like a highway Thunderdome.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And the other part is that, think about the guy inside of the vehicle, and we forget this, is that ever since the LA riots and Richard Denny, you're not getting out of the vehicle. They threw bricks at his head. You're not getting out of the vehicle. Yes. When you are in a group of people that are screaming at you, we do not get out of the vehicle to talk to them anymore. We drive away, because what happens when you get out of the vehicle normally is very bad stuff. So the idea that he continued to drive through the people, that should be expected based on, how some of the people have behaved when the people have gotten out of the cars.
I thought we were going to be at 627.
I thought so, but no, we screwed this.
I looked down.
I know.
And sweet goodness, it's 6:34. We have to cut away for a break, because we have to do the FCC required Thorpe Report, and then the equally FCC required You Choose the News. My God, folks, we have just talked all the way through this. And of course, Alexa finds the name of the guy who is the Jeep driver just in time. Hey, it's George Brauchler on The George Show. Stick around, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. I have hosed Billy for the best parts of the show. We're not the number one talk show in Denver for no reason. It's for one reason. It's the Thorpe Report, and you choose the news. Billy, have at it, my friend.
Hey, don't blame me for this.
You get the full credit / blame every time.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Temperatures are going to drop into the 80s for the rest of the week. Chance of storms and showers each and every afternoon this week. One of the biggest concerns is going to be heavy rain and flooding around our metro area. Yesterday, the Aurora City Council voted 9-1 to reinstate its reserve police force. Aurora had a reserve police program until the early 2000s. After interest in the program dropped to nearly zero, they got rid of it. So now they're going to bring it back.
Aurora?
Yep. Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky introduced
Hold
the
on,
proposal.
Danielle?
Yeah, she was the one that introduced the program.
Is there any chance you and I can become reserve cops?
Oh, that would be fun.
That's its own, like, Paul Blart 4.
Yeah, exactly. You know? That is. And we promise we would not abuse that at all.
Never.
No, not at all. Living in Denver is getting more expensive. Surprise. Purchasing a home for the first time isn't easy for a lot of families. So Denver City Council is considering a grant program to make the dream of buying a home more possible. They're looking at $6.2 million funding agreement that would help a nonprofit, Elevation Community Land Trust. They would acquire and sell homes to households that are earning at 80% or below the area median income. So what would be 80% or below of median income in Denver?
Let's ask Salem.
For a family of four, that would be an income of $95,000 a year.
Oh my goodness,
95 grand
buddy.
is 80% of median income in the city. And
that's what you make just off the trivia stuff.
Exactly. That is, I mean, like, wow, that is a big number. Okay. New mayor brings new ideas at 8th Avenue and Grant Street in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood. There are now new trash bags. That's not the only idea. He didn't just think about Johnston putting trash in the bags. He's actually, with his emergency declaration of homelessness, he's bringing things like bathrooms and trash pickup to certain areas. Denver's Joint Information Center said as of last week, a designated truck is doing trash pickup every Monday and Thursday at 2 different encampments around the city. President Joe Biden has decided to keep U.S. Space Command headquarters in Colorado, overturning a last-ditch decision by the Trump administration to move it to Alabama. I'm certain that Tuberville's little stunt hasn't done anything that changed that.
Buddy.
Not at all.
They went on leave too, and now none. Anyway.
I know. Yeah. Colorado leaders want the federal government to do more to expedite the process of work authorization visas for incoming migrants from Central and South America, arguing it would save taxpayers money in the long run and help state businesses along the way. Also, we have a Colorado Springs woman sentenced to 22 years in prison for killing a 25-year-old woman who was walking home. It happened in 2022, June, near the intersection of Parker Road and Cottonwood Drive. The 25-year-old and her boyfriend were in the crosswalk. She was struck by a vehicle and passed away. A 57-year-old man was arrested yesterday on suspicion of sexual exploitation in Boulder County following a month-long investigation. 57-year-old Mitchell James Clute, C-L-U-T-E, was arrested for possessing and distributing child porn. Nice job.
What?
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Who was this guy?
Michael James Clute, C-L-U-T-E, 57. He resides on Dewey Avenue near the intersection of 7th Street and Boulder.
Child porn, huh?
Yeah, child porn. Great. A Colorado teenager pleaded not guilty yesterday to charges of attempting to support ISIS. He was the dude that was caught trying to leave the country to go become an ISIS fighter. He says he's not guilty. And Colorado has enhanced its move over law, so to better protect anybody at the side of the road. House Bill 231123 requires any driver who sees a stationary or disabled vehicle with its hazards on the side of the highway must move over into the next lane. Not closer to it.
Wait a minute. Say that again because people need to know this.
Yes. When you see a car that is stationary and it's pulled over at the side of the road with its hazards on, you are supposed to get to the lane away from it. Don't drive next to it. You're supposed to choose the lane next one over. So you're supposed to give it that right of way in case somebody's walking around the car or opens a door, because bad things seem to happen. So, that's a new law.
It's now an extension of what we did with cops. Remember?
Yes.
There was a truck that drove by, killed Trooper Cody Donahue, and we had the Trooper Cody Donahue law. Long overdue. This is just an extension of that makes total sense. But by the way, folks, only do it where it's safe. And if you're in the lane that they should be getting into, be smart, man.
Yes,
just
exactly.
Give them room.
Yes, exactly. Just give them room. Just drive smart. However, those are two words we don't use often in the same sentence. Drive and smart. That's all I got, sir. Back to you.
Listen, I love that. We've had some people chime in here on a couple different things. We'll update you on the You Choose the News in just a second here. Turns out Robin Nicetta's trial was supposed to start here, Ricky Tick. It's going to be continued. I think she's waived speedy trial. I hate the idea of the trial being continued, but I get it. She's dealing with a lot of stuff. And then somebody said that it's Danielle Jurinsky's birthday. Happy birthday, Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurensky. If it wasn't creepy, we'd have her on to just sing her happy birthday. But now that I've said it out loud, it would just be super awkward to maybe we'll just wait till she can come back on to talk about Robin Nicetta. Anyway, got a break. Come back. Give Billy the rest of the time for You Choose the News. It's the best part of the show. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. No time to lose. I'm going to give it to Billy. I was going to say you choose the news. I've already used that one. I've got to come up with some other rhymes. Billy.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes. It is that time of the morning we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. It is time for You Choose the News. We have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find stupid stories, giving them totally ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game. Why? Because nobody in charge is awake, and they have no idea we're doing this. So as long as the checks from the sponsor is clear, hey, we're going to keep doing this one. Alrighty, sir, we have some doozies for you today. Here are your headlines. Choose wisely. Headline number 1, the Seinfeld plan works. Headline number 2, portable flammable swimming pool. Headline number 3, restaurant declared public nuisance. And headline number 4, male Karen protests the woke. Alrighty, sir, your choices yet again are Seinfeld plan works, portable flammable swimming pool, restaurant declared public nuisance, and male Karen protests the woke. Your choice.
Seinfeld for?
Yes, Seinfeld for the win. Now, you remember the Seinfeld episode where you had a couple of the characters think that maybe if we collect all of those recyclable bottles and cans and then take them to Michigan, we could be thousandaires. Yes, because of an extra 5 cents. Well, it turns out that actually works.
Huh?
A family in California has been charged with doing exactly that, bringing in plastic bottles and aluminum cans from Arizona into California in order to redeem them. And boy, did they go big. They did it to the tune of $7.5 million worth.
Holy, how many cans is that, man?
I know. It's 170 tons worth of cans and bottles.
Did they just Smokey and the Bandit convoy this thing up there?
What they've got is, they work in partial of a recycling business. So what they did is they contracted with people in Arizona to send their stuff to them. Then they would return it into the state and get the money back.
Why is that a crime?
$7.5 million.
How is that a crime?
Because the deposits weren't paid inside of California. So importing stuff where the deposit wasn't paid
was it
in
Michigan
Arizona. It was from Arizona into California.
Oh, okay.
And that's the problem. But again, the Seinfeld plan worked. They did it to $7.5 million.
That's amazing. Isn't that a law?
Incredible.
Like you have to have bought it in California to get the 5 cents?
According to the California Attorney General's office, yes. That's at least what they're alleging. So
at this point, can't anyone trust the AG?
Again, it's $7.5 million.
That is amazing.
I can't believe it worked.
Amazing.
It absolutely worked. Alrighty, your next choice.
It's portable. A male Karen. You don't have
male
to go.
Karen.
Male Karen.
Male Karen protest the woke. A video has been making the rounds on social media of a Fairview, Ohio Petco. The footage shows a man yelling at employees saying, "This is stupid. People have had enough of your crap. I don't care what your policy is." Again, this is at a Petco. Why is he mad? Well, he's mad because they have a gender-neutral bathroom.
What?
Yes, but here's the thing. It's a Petco. Petcos don't have large, expensive bathrooms with numerous stalls. You know why?
No.
It's a Petco. That you don't get dozens of people going to the bathroom at a Petco. One person goes at a time. It's a gender-neutral bathroom, you twit, because only one person goes in at a time. It's just a restroom door. And guess what? Wait until Karen gets home here and realizes that every bathroom in his house is also gender neutral for the exact same reason.
I'm going to go home and check. Is that true?
Yes, because it's only one person. It's a Petco, you idiot.
Who knew?
You idiot.
Who knew?
I know, but he's mad. Why can't I just come on? They have one bathroom. We're not going together. Just stop it.
Son of a...
You can't fix the stupid. All right.
Let's just take the door off.
Yes, a portable flammable swimming pool or restaurant declared public nuisance.
I believe the restaurant was declared a public nuisance. I'm saving some for Friday. I'm kind of thinking.
The flammable swimming pool is funny as hell.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm saving that for Friday. Loser.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. You better be here on Friday.
I may not be here on Friday.
Dang it.
Okay. City Council has declared Dick's Fish and Chips at 660.
Wait, just say it again.
Yeah, City Council has declared Dick's Fish and Chips at 660 Island Highway a public nuisance. Why? Because they stink. Worse than the friend in the office that also decides to microwave the fish. The issue is that because they are cooking seafood, whatever the recipe is, the neighbors say it stinks. And they've had investigators out there, and the investigators have gone, yeah, it really smells. So they've declared it a public nuisance, and now they are telling the restaurant they have to either close down or include charcoal filters they have to change weekly. And what else do they have to do? They have to change the fryer oil at least every 3 days. Something apparently they weren't doing before. Yes,
I'm spitting
exactly.
up in my mouth.
I guess neighbors have been complaining for
I'm
years
shuddering.
about Dick's Fish and Chips. Yes, I said that on purpose. In 2016, Mike and Jan Sell, who live next door, wrote the city council saying their property was consumed with toxic smell and deep fryer almost every day from Dick's Fish and Chips. Yeah. So yeah, they've been declared a health hazard.
God,
I know. That is the love of God. And that is it. That is the
That's
end of
amazing that
today's.
you've
Yes,
done that.
you choose the news. I cannot believe we made it through because finally
I
we get
can't
to
either.
cash the check. Yes, today we are proudly sponsored by the Donner Culinary Institute. Yes, it is the Short People Guide to Cannibalism. Learn how to cook short ribs, mini muffins, choosing the right Dutch oven, side dishes and finger sandwiches, festive jello molds, midget under glass. All of these are wonderful along with cage-free options. Bob's Barbecue and Kidney Beans are all things you'll be able to cook thanks to the Donner Culinary Institute and their new Short People Guide to Cannibalism. Operators are standing by.
Buddy, the timing is exquisite. Folks, we're at the end of that first hour. Many of you can't believe it because it's been a week since we've been able to do that. Well, congratulations, and you're welcome. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to be visited by our friend Dave Williams. It turns out he's in charge of the GOP state party. Big stuff going on this weekend. We'll talk to him about that and some other issues. You text in your questions when he's on. Guy will even take calls. I mean, he just has guts. And next hour, I don't know if you heard, but some dude who did business with Hunter Biden, he talked to some folks in Congress yesterday. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. It's hour 2 of 4 right here on the George Show on 710 KNUS. Chuck Kirk at 10, Prager at 11, at 1, Seb Gorka, and then we go live and local with Deb. I had billed Stephen Tubbs as being on from 4 to 7 yesterday, but when I turned it on to listen, it was Pete. It was Sweet Pete Boyles. Any idea, Billy, is, and I should just go right to the listeners and ask Alexa who's going to be on this afternoon, because she seems to get the emails that we're supposed to receive. I don't know how she does it. It's probably some cyber hacking stuff. Years from now, it'll be revealed that Alexa was actually a Chinese plant of some kind and just kept tabs on talk radio here at 710 KNUS and other stations that will remain nameless for purposes of monitoring and influencing the host. So congratulations on doing that. 8 o'clock, we're going to have Dave Williams. He's going to talk to us about things going on with the state party. We have Dave on, I don't know, about every month or so. You know, in the past, we'd had Priscilla Ron on, but Priscilla, who on this show broke the news and made the announcement that she is running for Douglas County Commissioner. Big kickoff event for Priscilla tonight. I intend on being there. I'm a big prawn fan. I think we're the ones that gave her that title. And not just because of the candle making, but because she's good people and we need good people in government. And she wants to serve to replace Commissioner Laura Thomas. And I say, let's have at it, man. I think she'll do a great job on behalf of the county. Nonetheless, there's a lot of stuff going on in Congress these days involving investigating the Bidens, Joe, Hunter, mostly. Whether it's the laptop or Burisma or any of these other things. Well, yesterday, you may know that there was a behind doors sort of there was no sound for it. I know that because I said, Billy, can you find sound for this? And he's like, it was behind closed doors. And I'm like, so it turns out Billy couldn't magic up that sound. But we know that for a couple hours, a guy named Devin Archer, who was a business partner of Hunter's, testified and answered questions, I imagine, from Republican and Democrat representatives about President Biden's, I don't know if it's influence or impact or involvement. It's one of those I words in a series of phone calls, no less than 20, that took place between Hunter Biden and those with whom he was either doing business or seeking to do business, and he would be on those calls. Now, as you might imagine, post-meeting, there's a whole bunch of comments from Republicans and Democrats about how, oh, this was devastating, and there's more to find out here. We'll get those clips. And then from the other side, and we'll play this clip too, it was nothing to see here. This was stupid. I mean, we learned nothing from this. But I think in order to make sure we've got the ground set for this, we've got to go back to the fact that these questions were being asked of Biden for a long time. And I think in part it's because people widely accept that Hunter Biden is not an exceptional human being, that he's an incredibly flawed character, drug addict, probably some perverse sex addict, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but somehow managed to land huge international deals with big companies that paid him a lot of money, made millions of bucks. And the question is, how is that possible? Now, you and I sitting here would be lying to each other if we said that the vast majority of that came from his last name. And that last name being associated with the former vice president at the time and now the president of the United States. If you deny that, if you're like, no, Hunter Biden in his own right, he's really great. I've never seen anyone say that. I've never heard any stories about that. If it's true, it's just escaped me. So maybe that's possible. Maybe he's just a genius in the energy world and I didn't know it. Nonetheless, these questions have been surfacing for a while. Here is a question asked of former KJP, former press secretary, by the way, infinitely better than KJP. You can hate Jen Psaki for a whole lot of reasons. It can't be for her competence as a press secretary. She could bring the heat. KJP still trying to figure out why eye contact is important during an answer. But here's what Jen said when asked this question.
We've heard the president say over and over again that he has never spoken to his son about his business dealings. Has he ever spoken to his son's business partners about his son's business dealings?
Again, nothing has changed about what I said yesterday. The president does not get involved in the business dealings of his son.
even through his son's business partners?
Nothing has changed since what I said yesterday.
I don't believe you answered that part of my question yesterday.
He's not involved in his son's business dealings.
That's an important word, and it's one that we're going to have to discuss a lot. What does the term involved mean? And we'll get to that, but I want to play you some more sound here. As part of this same back and forth, this exchange, Jen Psaki was asked this. I probably played these out of order.
And the president has said that he never spoke to his son about his overseas business dealings. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Hear that one more time. It's a short one. That's Peter Ducey, son of Steve.
And the president has said that he never spoke to his son about his overseas business dealings. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Now, he never spoke to his son about his business dealings. Now, we're going to talk about that phrase too. That's super important. Here's the president himself in a very, very short response when asked the same question.
I've never spoken to my son about real estate.
Let's hear it one more time.
I've never spoken to my son about real estate.
I couldn't make out the last part of that, Billy, but it's I've never spoken to my son. I presume it's business dealings or some such stuff, but I've never spoken to my son about that. Now, of course, as you can imagine, after this particular closed door 2-hour testimonial session, and I presume the transcript's going to be made available. We're already getting the spin on it. You can imagine what you'll get from those who are inclined to look at the evidence that's out there now and say there's something more going on. This is the exchange between Fox's Sean Hannity and Representative Coomer. By the way, the questions that Sean asked, and this is, I mean, again, if you've watched Hannity for years, and I have, he just packs so much into a question. It's very O'Reilly-like, but he has his own style. Listen to this one.
And to get to the truth, and we went a long way today. Please. Do you believe that this is now officially the Joe Biden bribery allegation? And do you believe that you will be able to prove that?
I sure hope so. And I do believe that there's a lot of smoke, and where there's smoke, there's fire.
Well, that wasn't the strongest answer you can imagine. That wasn't absolutely going to happen. And I guess maybe to Coomer's credit here, he didn't go all Schiff. He didn't go Adam Schiff, which was, I've seen the information. Undoubtedly, he is a Russian agent or whatever it was that he said. So, but it sounds like he's like, hey, I think there's more here. We need to keep digging. I'm in that camp. I want to know a little bit more about this. But then you have a Democrat who was the representative on this thing. His name is Goldman. He's from New York, and he had something different to say.
We just finished the 2 hours of Republican questioning, and I think it is safe to say that after yet another 2 hours, there still is no connection of any of Hunter Biden's business dealings with President Biden. The witness indicated that Hunter spoke to his father every day, and approximately 20 times over the course of 10-year relationship, Hunter may have put his father on the phone with any number of different people, and they never once spoke about any business dealings. As he described it, it was all casual conversation, niceties, the weather, what's going on. There wasn't a single conversation about any of the business dealings that Hunter had.
Now, and I pause it there. We have a longer clip, and he talks a lot about Burisma and the fact that Burisma was actually like, hey, we love the prosecutor we have now. We think we have him in our pocket. And then Biden went ahead and advocated for the removal of that prosecutor. Therefore, there's evidence that they didn't have that kind of influence that they'd hoped for here. But I want to stop it there because he has given a description of what Joe Biden has done there over the course of these 20 years, these 20 times. Now, my hope is they drilled down on the dates because the dates matter here. For instance, if Joe Biden is on these calls sometime after January 20th of 2017, but before January 20th of 2021, it's a different analysis for me because the dude isn't in government. Now, if he's running for office and he's the nominee, maybe those dates are too broad. That would concern me. But what he does as a private citizen post being vice president, I get it, man. That kind of influence peddling takes place. I don't think it looks good, but I understand that it's also not criminal or unethical. However, to the extent that these calls took place when he was vice president, and I just don't know the dates yet. I haven't heard anything that says when this happened. The issue for me is the definition of these terms and what you ascribe to both Psaki and the president of the United States and what they mean by involved in the business dealings of his son. And so when you hear those clips, not being able to access the actual direct testimony of Devin Archer, the former business partner of Hunter Biden, who was a witness to all this stuff, do you hear evidence that you consider to be involved in the business dealings? Because if that's true, if it's involved, and again, maybe there's a gray area there, I don't think so, then we have a real issue here. And I'd love to have that conversation with you, 303-696-1971. What we don't have is we don't have any evidence, at least from Devin Archer, that there was any discussion of here's how I, Joe Biden, can advance the cause for your business if you sign up with my son. Of course not, man. I don't know anybody that uses influence in that way. But it is unequivocal to me that the president of the United States, had to know that his presence on that phone call served only one purpose. And that purpose was to assure the people on the phone that his son Hunter had immediate and direct access to him, and that he was interested enough in his son's success and what he was doing that he would actually jump on a phone call with these guys that he didn't even know on a business dealing. So Billy and I have a disagreement here about the weight of this thing. And I think that what some folks want to see in this and think exist, and it's not far afield of what Billy says isn't here, is they want to see that smoking gun. They want to see that conversation or a change in policy that took place post phone call that would suggest the phone call had a direct impact. Yeah, if we saw that, that would make it crystal clear. But I don't think the absence of that changes the wrongness of what took place if these calls were to have taken place while the big guy was the vice president of the United States, or God forbid, the president of the United States. It strikes me that he has to know what he's doing. I mean, and here's the best example. Think about if you're in business for yourself, think about saying, hey, people I want to do business with, can I get my dad on the phone? They would say, well, why in the hell do you want to get your dad on the phone? And if your dad is like, God, I don't know, Tom Cruise, although I don't think that's real, but if your dad was Tom Cruise, maybe it's, hey man, did you guys love Maverick? Did you guys love Top Gun? Do you love Mission Impossible? Talk to my dad, the superstar from Hollywood. That would be one thing, right? That would be that sort of rubbernecking, just a famous guy. But that's not what seemingly is going on here. What it appears to me is that Hunter and the president must know that his only purpose on this phone call, no matter what he says on the phone, is to advance the idea that Hunter Biden has influence with him and has access to him. And that would be a reason to either get in bed with his son. And you know what, given some of the pictures that are out there, I'm going to have to rephrase that. Get in business with his son, or to stay in business with his son. I'm trying to think of a good analogy here, but in my mind, if I'm the DA and someone in my family is talking with a defendant in a case, and they said, hey, you should hire me as your defense attorney. Let's say Amanda goes to law school. You should hire me as your defense attorney. By the way, let me get my dad on the phone. If their dad isn't, if Amanda's dad isn't the district attorney, they're like, why are you getting your dad on the phone? You know, it would be super weird. But if your dad's the DA, they're like, hey, dad, this is Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo here. And I get on there and I'm like, hey, man, how about those Broncos? How about Tim Patrick? Man, that's sick. What happened? That's too bad. How about the Nugs? How about the weather? And I get off. Isn't the purpose obvious? The purpose would be obvious that Amanda would be trying to demonstrate to this would-be client that she has direct access to somebody who can make a decision. She never gets on the phone. I never get on the phone and say, hey, if you hire my daughter, I'm going to do X. That would be dumb. That would be criminally stupid. But the message is clear, isn't it? The only reason that Hunter Biden would have his dad on the phone in these kinds of calls would be to advance the idea that he has influence with him, and it would be beneficial to hire Hunter Biden over Hunter Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo, right? Hunter Shabadoo has no influence with anyone. Hunter Biden has influence with his dad, not just because of his name, but hey, dad's on the call with me. So if that's true, if that's what's going on, now what? What does this mean? I mean, there was some guy that left, I can't remember his name. Some dude got in on the comments after this meeting and said, now we need to launch the impeachment inquiry. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I think that the phone calls were obvious what they were for. I think it was ridiculous. But whoa, how do we get to impeachment from that? Did these things happen while he was president of the United States? If they were, okay, I have some serious concerns. But if they took place when he was out of office, what's the crime? It's unseemly. Yeah, it's influence peddling at the highest level, literally the highest level, right? The only thing different would be if he called up former President Obama. But that's what's going on here. So where do we go from here? What did you hear in those clips? 303-696-1971. I agree that what took place was influence peddling. I also believe that President Biden, by virtue of knowing what he was doing, getting on those calls more than once, was involved in his son's business. He's involved in his son's business. So those denials by him and by Psaki turn out to be bunk. They're untrue. But the problem is the term involved is squishy. What does involved mean? We've gone full Bill Clinton here. It depends on what the definition of is. What does involved mean? Well, involved is a broad term. And if you're the guy going out there doing deals with your son, that's for sure involved. If you're the guy getting on the call involving clients and you know your purpose is to reassure them about your son's access to you, how can that be viewed as anything other than involved? There needs to be more questions. Again, here's some texters, by the way. You can always text us at the app at 710KNUS on the app or 710KNUS.com. Love the text. I read most of them online. We're also up on Rumble and YouTube. My favorite's the calls, 303-696-1971. What did you hear there? Is this some kind of an impeachable offense? And if it is, what is the impeachable offense? We just went through 2 failed impeachment attempts on President Trump during his term in office. And I know everybody's chomping at the bit. What is the impeachable offense that you think has grown out of this? I don't see it. Here's text. You can't have it both ways. Biden has no idea who or where he is, but had to know what he was doing. Pick one. No, I disagree. You can think that this guy has moments of being completely docile or confused, and yet at the same time, I mean, it's not like the guy's pissing himself on stage talking to people. He knows he's talking to people. He knows he's the president. He knows what talking points he's been given. That doesn't change the fact that his intellectual response time is ridiculous in some occasions, that he appears confused and lost in others. It's not a 100% the guy has gone full Fetterman or he's the sharpest knife in the drawer. I disagree, texter. Why is this guy? You tell me, texter, why is he on the phone? Is he some dupe that Hunter just said, hey, Dad, I've got some buddies from college on the phone. They just wanted to hear you talk about the weather. Texter, call in and tell me what you think. 303-696-1971. Tell me how this isn't a problem in terms of being involved in his son's business. But the question is, for me, is so what? And I don't mean so what that it doesn't matter. I mean, so what in the context of impeachment? What does his involvement in his son's business have to do with impeachment? Remember that Article 2, second article of the Constitution, talks about the executive branch, and it talks about impeachment, and it lists some things pretty specifically. High crimes and misdemeanors. What is this? What is this that took place that should result in an impeachment? 303-696-1971, going right to the phone lines. Tony from Littleton, get us kicked off, my man. What do you think about all this?
Well, you know, I've been listening to this show today and a few last week when you and I just want to kind of clear the air on my understanding of a couple of these issues. So let's just take them, you know, quickly. They're easy. The Biden, last week you talked about, or it came up, the prosecutor of Biden going easy and being under the influence of the White House and so forth. And it should be noted, he sent a letter. He sent actually 3, but he's one specifically where he stated he's never so much as had a word with Merrick Garland or the White House about the position of Joe Biden or, you know, any influence whatsoever.
Who sent this?
This is the prosecutor, the guy that's chasing after Biden, the prosecutor assigned to the Biden case. That's
the Maryland guy, the U.S. attorney out of Maryland.
Yeah, he's saying absolutely have not had a single bit of influence from either the White House directly or through Merrick Garland. I think because he was so willing to put that in writing, and at the risk of, you know, if you lie in writing, you've got it in writing. I'm going to take him at his word right there. He probably has not been influenced by the White House or Merrick Garland regarding the pursuing Hunter Biden.
Okay.
The second one is the Ukrainian prosecutor. Maybe you remember this when this was going on and all that was said about it. It was not Joe Biden that said get rid of that prosecutor in Ukraine. That was the World Trade Bank, the European Union, the UK, and the United States said no more money, no more loans, because this guy would not pursue the corruption that was going on inside their government, and that's why they wanted him removed. That was not Joe Biden. That was, and I take that. I heard Lagarde, I think was her name, from the World Trade Bank, give this whole. It was just an interview about what was going on in Ukraine, and she explained that this was the policy of all entities: no more money to Ukraine. Okay, I'll take her at. I'm going to take her at her word that she wasn't lying about her own intentions.
But Tony, that's not. It's not the point you think it is for this conversation, because the argument that Republicans have made, that Trump has made, is that his presence on these deals with Hunter resulted in this influence in removing this prosecutor. And the point that Goldman makes out of New York is Burisma didn't want to lose this prosecutor for the reasons you've just highlighted. So I get what you're saying, but that's not a rebuttal to what we've been talking about. It looks like whether Biden had influence over the removal of the prosecutor or not, it's not relevant to this conversation.
Burisma wanted him gone, right? Or wanted him to stay, you're saying. Burisma wanted to keep
That's right. That's
prosecutor.
What Goldman says. Goldman says, according to Devin Archer, they thought they had the prosecutor in their pocket, and so that the removal of the prosecutor would be disadvantageous to it, which means if Biden had any influence over the removal, it was actually counter to Burisma's best interest. So that's the point of that thing.
It is true that Biden delivered the message when he was there on a visit, saying, "This is it. You got 24 hours to sort this out, or you're not getting any more money from the entities I just listed." So yes, so that was counter to what his son's interests were, but Joe Biden did indeed deliver the message on behalf of the World Trade Bank and the UK and the European Union, and in a meeting when he was in, and that's what Trump was trying to go after him for. Well, that's the fact is he did insist. I mean, it was he delivered the policy message. So I don't know how you feel about that, other than that's what is on the record, and all these people across that list have all attested to that. So I'm going to take that group of people at their word and say, yeah, they all wanted this guy gone. And if that didn't serve Hunter Biden's interest, I guess his father didn't give a shit. Excuse me. Sorry,
yeah, buddy.
His father
man.
didn't care.
You got to be careful, man. That FCC, they're constantly lurking out there.
He didn't care what his son, in that case, apparently, he didn't care what his son's interests were.
Yeah, you tell me this, Tony. Why is he on the phone calls with Hunter and those business partners?
Look, the influence thing, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. And it happens.
Then let's get to the next point. Do you think that constitutes involvement in the business?
All right. I'm going to go to your other question, the timing. Yeah, no, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does. I mean, at least tangentially it does. Okay, so what they're saying, that's a lie. That's a misrepresentation. That's a stretching of the term. What is,
right?
What is, well, it's not impeachable. Look,
that's a different question. You're saying here, you're willing to concede that Jen Psaki and the president of the United States lied about his involvement in his son's business. If that's where you're going, again, I don't think that's impeachable either, but that's a big consolation. That's a big concession to make, isn't it?
Maybe it's a big concession to make. I guess I watched what happened, and this is not whataboutism. It's simply, we know what goes on. We know all the kind of influence and business dealings, trying to land towers and stuff, so forth, that was going on around the Trump and his family. Which did not surprise me. Yeah. That didn't surprise me when it occurred. And now I would be pissed off. I would be very upset if I found out that Biden had done that while either as VP or as president. I would find that appalling. Now, whether it's impeachable, maybe at that point, I would say that's ugly. Now, if it's something that's occurred in between those 2 points, I'm not surprised by it a bit. And the influence peddling goes on. What about Mitch McConnell and his wife and the Chinese and the freight and all the things that they do? It happens all the time with these government guys. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. The problem is, I think there is the potential for a violation of federal law if he did it while he was in office as vice president or even senator. I just am not sure how that foreign, there's this thing called FARA that Hunter Biden may have run afoul of. I just don't know how the foreign influence and foreign contact thing works. Tony, would you forgive me? I've got to cut away for a break, man. Thanks for the great phone call to get us kicked off. The guy said, oh my gosh. Tony's line is open, 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away for a break right after I tell you quickly here. Hey, coming up this month, the wait is almost over on August the 30th. That's just at the other end of the month from where we're sitting at right now on Colorado Day. Dennis Prager back in town, 3rd annual cigar night. I was at last year's. I was so new to this hour, this show, that they let me actually have the microphone for a couple minutes. I don't know if they're going to let me back on stage. You got to get there to find out, but go to 710knus.com. I feel like I'm going Biden Fetterman here. 710knus.com and get your tickets there. It's at the View House in Centennial, right off of I-25. Very, very easy to get to no matter what part of the metro area you're coming from. Hors d'oeuvres, carving station, first beverage, premium cigars. Seating be limited, just like last year. Get your tickets and complete details. I will see you there. Stick around. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. We've got some texts that are coming in here. Still looking for the texter who feels like there's a double standard here, that Biden is either full-on brilliant mind or he has to be some drooling fool. I don't think that that's true, but they're not calling in. 303-696-1971 is that number. Another text. So it's crazy to think these countries are spending that kind of money just for the quote Biden name and to talk to daddy. It's about way more than that, and we all know it is. P.S. What's his son's business again? I missed that part. Couple things in there. There was an article. You may have heard this. I cannot. I'll put my fingers on it here, just not at the moment I want to do that. That talked about that this was influence peddling. This was the perception. Here it is. Hunter Biden sold the illusion of access to his father. That's what Devin Archer said. The illusion of access. I don't care, because in order for him to sell that illusion, his dad had to be part of the illusion. So the question for me is, my goodness, is what kind of fraud is this? I mean, if the president, at the time that he gets on the phone, knows that he is there to advance this illusion of access, why is that better than if he was actually selling access? It seems to me that he's perpetrating this fraud on behalf of his son in order to get these foreign companies to pay a whole bunch of money. I don't get it. This feels to me like selling fake cocaine, right? Like, I was never going to sell them real cocaine. It was baby powder. It was an imitation drug. So I didn't do anything wrong. We would say, no, the law says you did something wrong. The problem here is I can't see what law he broke. So if we're going to impeach President Biden, and please don't let this turn into a tit for tat nonsense. I get it. The Dems ginned up 2 garbage impeachments against President Trump, never had the goods or really any hope of getting this done. They just wanted to dirty him up, and they did, and he made it easy for them. Let's be honest. But is this what we're doing now? Is we are so desperate to find something to impeach the president on? Okay, get me there. Get me there. Tell me how this is impeachable. Tell me what the crime is that took place here. We should impeach President Biden. And I've heard this a bunch too, the Biden crime family. In no way do I think that these are moral, upstanding people compared to my neighbors or anything like that. But where's the crime that results in an impeachment? Because it has to be something that took place while he was in office, right? And my thought, at least that's how I see it. I mean, if you think we're going to impeach presidents for conduct that took place before they were president, we're in real trouble here. So it's either got to take place when he was president, maybe vice president. I don't know. But tell me what that is. 303-696-1971. Here's someone else. Now, listen, this is the person that refuses to call in. And they were the ones that said you can't have it both ways. Either Biden has no idea where he is or he knew what he was doing. Pick one. And then they went after me for saying that nobody accused Biden of going full Fetterman. And they said, that was awful. Guess you have no mental difficulties in your perfect family. Well, one, I don't have a perfect family. Nobody does. And I said, what? They said, what do you mean by full Fetterman? My answer, stroke-induced intellectual incompetence. And this person comes back and says he had no stroke. I don't know how you have missed all the coverage on the stroke and the fact that he was just a babbling fool for a while during the campaign, and Dems still voted for him to be in office. They said, no, he had no stroke. He was hospitalized for depression. Nope. He could have both. The stroke and the post-stroke depression, which is what it was. They called me an a-hole in the text. I sent them the link to their favorite periodical, the New York Times, that said John Fetterman, Senate stroke, life afterwards, blah, blah, blah. And then it turned into this nonsense back and forth, folks, where it was, I admit my mistakes, never admitted it, and finally texted in, folks, Jesus, I was wrong. What a baby. For a lawyer, you have a thin skin. One, I wish my skin was thinner and younger. It's not. But two, listen, you can come at me with all sorts of things. I want to have the conversation with you. but you got to bring real facts and you got to bring evidence. If all you're going to bring is name calling or supposition, and you know this from listening to me, I don't care if you're right or left on this. You just got to bring the information and we can have a conversation about it. Now, here's the deal. I got to cut. We got Joe on the line. One line open at 303-696-1971. Join Joe. Let me do this because I don't want to cut Joe off short. Let me do a little bit of business here, and then we'll come back. We'll take calls through the rest of this hour, and then we're going to have Dave Williams from the GOP. One sec. That was the sound of me picking something up off the floor. Let me tell you about our friends at QC Kinetix. I told Billy today when we came in that from now on, I'm going to set myself a habit. It's August 1st. It's Colorado Day. Here's my thing. My new Colorado Day resolution. I'm going to do 10 push-ups during every break. Just 10. We may graduate beyond that, but I want to try to get back into some push-up shape here for a whole bunch of reasons. I can hear the snap, crackle, and pop in my shoulders. I mean, like I've never heard it before. Nonetheless, I'm going to persist on this thing, but it makes me wonder about my joints elsewhere and what I'm going to do when the warranty starts to run out on those things. Hips, knees, ankles, shoulders, back, it doesn't matter. The first place to go. No, let me just say this. I don't even think it's the first place to go. Go to the doctor. Go to the regular doctor. Have them talk to you and say, here are your options. And whatever their options include, don't make a decision yet. Instead, go to QC Kinetix. Go to our friends at 303-900-8986. That's a local number because it reaches local medical professionals. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986, and ask them about regenerative medicine, because that's the science of using you to fix you. So before you follow your regular doctor's advice, at least get this information. And my guess is you do this. You try this with them, because at the end of the day, what you're looking for is to get back on your feet as quickly as possible. Very little pain. In fact, I don't even know if there is any pain because it's just an injection. No downtime, no rehabilitation, no exposed to the infection risk from being cut open. It's our friends at QC Kinetix. You can check them out at qckinetix.com, qckinetix.com. When we come back, Joe, other callers on the line. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, flying like an eagle through this second hour. Dave Williams, chair of the GOP, up in the 8 o'clock hour. Let's get right to the phone lines. Joe from Arvada, you're on 710 KNUS. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Good morning, George. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, man.
Well, I'm going to do my best imitation. Follow the money.
What does that mean?
Did you ever see All the President's Men with Robert Redford?
Many times.
And,
great movie. Classic movie.
Okay. Deep Throat said it the best. Follow the money.
No, I get that. That was follow the money to figure out who paid for the plumbers and all that other stuff. But in this context, what do you think is going on based off of what we heard from this Devin Archer? Like when people say, hey, let's go impeach this guy, what is it we're impeaching him for?
Well, okay. So the brand was Joe Biden.
Agreed.
And they were selling the brand.
Agreed.
And so what they did is they went around from country to country selling the brand. And then the money flowed to Hunter. It rolled into his bank account. Devin Archer made a fortune.
Got it.
All of the people that were around Hunter Biden were dressed up with hookers and coke.
Yeah.
It was party. And then all the money flowed into Hunter's overseas bank accounts, and all of the traps and traversing schemes that they set up to hide the money. And then the money went to all the Bidens, and all the Bidens got filthy rich.
Well,
and they got rich off of selling Joe Biden
I know, but where's
to the world.
Just taking at face value the things that you say, and I'm not sure all of that's true, but let's just take it as true for this conversation. What's the crime?
The crime is bribery.
What is he being? Who's being bribed?
Prima facie reason to impeach is bribery.
Yeah, but who's being bribed
bribery
and for what?
Bribery for access to the presidency or the vice presidency or the United States government. And it's been proven many, many times. Joe Biden, remember, I don't give him the $1 billion. You don't get the money unless I say so, because I took the bribe.
Well, what I don't understand, I don't understand one. If what you're saying is, hey, Hunter Biden traded on the name, which I believe he did. I believe that Joe Biden knew about it, participated in it to try to get his son business. I don't know if there's any evidence that there was money that exchanged hands between Hunter and his father as a result of that, nor that it was for some specific purpose. I mean, did they trade on the Biden name in an unseemly way? Yes, but
Hunter
where's the
had to
bribery?
pay all of Joe Biden's bills. Remember,
No,
Joe Biden, he has never made some paltry amount of money as a senator compared to his vast wealth.
But where's the bribery? If that's true, where's the bribery?
Bribery is the many, many things that Joe Biden did for all the payors. You see, remember,
you lost me there, Joe. You lost me.
He got the guy fired for the money.
Hold on, but
wait a second.
Which guy did he get fired?
China.
Which guy did he get fired?
He's not looking at China for the money.
Joe, which guy did he get fired?
Remember the prosecutor?
Yeah, but didn't you hear that the
Ukraine?
Didn't you hear Goldman from New York say as a result?
Yeah. They all just sat around having dinner. Nobody ever talked about any business.
No, Joe, that wasn't what he said.
But remember,
Joe, forgive me, buddy. Joe,
wait a second.
I never want to cut you off unless I'm talking, and I just had to do it, buddy. I've got 15 seconds, man. I can't do it. You didn't listen to the clip from Goldman. It wasn't anything to do with that. We can talk about that in the 9. Dave Williams from the state GOP next. Get your questions ready. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Well, you've made it through halfway through the August 1st Colorado Day show with George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. It is that time of the month. That's a really awkward phrase to end right there, when we get to be joined by the chair of the state GOP. Always thankful for his time and willingness to come on and answer the questions for the listeners. It's Dave Williams. Sir, how are you?
Doing great, George. Thanks for having me again.
Big meeting coming up this Saturday. First off, tell folks where. I know not everybody can go because it's kind of a small group, executive committee kind of super group thing, but where are you guys doing this?
Yeah, you bet. We're actually doing it in Douglas County, Castle Rock, specifically the Rock Church.
And how many attendees do you expect? First off, how many are eligible, and then how many do you expect? Best guess.
Yeah, sure. A little over 400 are eligible to come and vote, and we suspect at a minimum we'll see about 300 or so.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we expect a little bit of higher turnout given the, of course, given the election for vice chair and the bylaws that are in question.
Now, what are the things that are being debated? Now, I've had some texters already text in and say, hey, ask about what they're calling the Bonniwell Amendment. That is a reference to Chuck Bonniwell of Chuck and Julie Show, formerly on this station. And Chuck, super smart attorney guy, big time Republican, and he drafted an amendment you and I discussed, I think, when you were last on here. And it was the idea that there would be a vote taken about whether to withdraw from the current primary structure for the state. And the law says it's got to be 75%, but the Bonniwell Amendment would say, if you don't show up to cast a vote one way or another, we're going to count that as a yes towards the 75%. I'll get to that in a minute. In addition to that amendment, are there others out there that maybe we just haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, sure. We have 6 other amendments that are going to be discussed. One of them has to do with the national delegate selection process with respect to just updating and making changes to our framework. We still have to finalize what that plan will be in September, but this gets the ball rolling. We have another one.
Does it change anything drastically in terms of the process or the procedure or eligibility or anything like that?
Well, the 2 significant changes are we're going to remove unpledged delegates. Everyone's going to have to pick a horse if they want to be a delegate. And then the other major change is the binding of delegates to 2 rounds at Milwaukee, should there be a brokered convention.
Oh, interesting. I get it. So through the first 2 rounds, they have to vote the way they've pledged when they get sent. How is that enforceable?
Well, that's well, I mean, it's in our bylaws, and that's what people are going to have to agree to if they run initially. But I mean, I suppose ultimately the honor system, I suspect that there are going to be rules at the RNC that will help further enforce it. But I don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee come next year. There might not even be a situation where we have a brokered convention, but we wanted to do this so that we can give a little bit more certainty to these candidates and ensure that we don't get lost in the mix with Super Tuesday, especially with California coming on board.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what steps can be taken to ensure that enforceability. I mean, outside of being able to just simply remove them and say your votes don't count, we're going to go with the alternates, it'd be tough to see how that plays out. But I'm interested in seeing what happens with that. Anything else that you can think of that's going on? I'm sorry I brought you back to that one because I hadn't heard.
Yeah, no, you bet. We're just a lot of other housekeeping items. One has to deal with how we handle controversies so that we don't have any other special meetings like we did with El Paso this past February. And then some other stuff having to do with our IEC, but nothing that changes it, just more conforming amendments to certain campaign finance cases that have been heard.
Is the biggest thing that you can think of, the thing that's going to draw all the attention, this claimed Bonniwell Amendment that I just described as best I could?
Yeah, I do think so. I think what's interesting about this particular amendment is it's kind of overshadowing even the vice chair election. So we've had more discussion over this than we have the candidates that have stepped up. So yeah, I anticipate most debate will settle on that specific amendment.
You bring up a good point. I should have asked you, how many candidates are there to replace Priscilla?
Sure. There are 5 candidates running. We're going to have a debate that's on Zoom. And we'll put that on social media for people to watch, but that's going to be Thursday at 6.
Oh, yeah. Please shoot that to us. I'd love to either put that on our website or at least push it out to people that day to let them know. That's a big deal. Do you remember who the 5 are? I didn't ask you to bring a list, but do you remember who they are?
Yeah, you're on top of my head. Aaron Wood from Douglas County, Todd Watkins, El Paso, Hope Scheppelman from, I believe, Plata, Stu Asay from Gunnison, and Alex Magatu from Pueblo.
Wow, that's a big one. I know you don't weigh in on those races, but can you weigh in on the ballot amendment things? Ballot amendment, like the Bonniewell amendment.
Sure. I can weigh in on that. I actually took a position, and I've already committed to handing over the gavel since I've taken a public position on this. So on that particular question, we'll have a temporary chairman who won't take a position nor vote.
Who's that temporary chairman?
It's going to be Tom Bjorklund, our treasurer. He's a non-voting member, and he's not taking a side. So,
tell us about the position that you took.
Sure. I ultimately came out in favor of the Bonniewell amendment. There's going to be an amendment to help kind of narrow this and clarify it, but ultimately the impact is the same. And the reason I did that was because we don't get to have neutrality with respect to these no-shows. The people that don't show up either have to be counted in the negative or the affirmative. And given the ridiculously unconstitutional high bar of 75% that was imposed on us by the state, I think it's fair to assume the position the other way. Just in this one instance, though, I think normally we should be able to have abstentions, and no-shows shouldn't be counted either way.
Why do you think that's fair, Dave?
It's fair because we don't get to pick abstentions. I mean, that's the thing. Given how the statute is written and what was contemplated, if you're a no-show, your vote is already assumed. Will default in the negative, and if we're going to be assuming votes, then we should do it in a way that doesn't constrain the party.
Well, what if Dave? Let me paint a hypothetical for you. What if someone shows up? They're a voting member, and they listen to this, and they're like, you know what? I don't know. I'm not persuaded to vote for it, but I don't want to vote against it. I'm just not going to vote. Would you force that person to be counted as a yes, even though they're present but withheld their affirmation?
Well, not in any other instance but this one. I think given the ridiculously high bar of 75% total membership, where no shows are going to be counted in the negative, and yeah, I think in this one limited instance, it's fair, especially since this is a clear violation of our freedom of association rights. And I think what makes it a little bit more palatable for folks that are unsure about this is that we're giving sufficient notice. We're debating this very issue right now, and 66% of the party gets to define what its membership means and what its processes are. So I think in this one limited instance, it's okay to pursue.
It sounds like, and I want to just clarify this, it sounds like it's not about no-shows. Like if 100 people showed up and said, I just don't want to vote for it. I don't want to be on record as opposing it, but I just don't want to vote for it. Would those people also be considered voting for the affirmative? Would you count them in favor of it, even though they've said, I'm here, I just don't want to vote for it?
Sure we would, because we don't get to count the abstention. We don't get to have abstentions. And I liken it to the analogy that you have a group of friends. You're trying to decide where to eat, and a couple of people come up with an idea, but you may not be feeling it, but you don't want to be against it, so you keep quiet. You're not lodging the objection, and therefore you're gonna deal with whatever food the rest of the group decides to have. That's very much what we're dealing with here.
But you're not. In fact, you could say, I don't have a vote, and you pick a place and they go, damn, I'm not going to Chuck E. Cheese's again, Dave. And then they just go home. Only here you're saying you don't get to go home. If you don't have an opinion, we're going to make the opinion for you. That's what this rule sounds like is, if you don't have an opinion, we're going to count your opinion as yes.
Well, the opinion's already been counted for in the negative. If you, in your scenario, it's still a no. The state's deciding for us that it's a no, unless we step up and flip the script. So I'm not sure what the problem is in terms of the party picking the assumption as opposed to the state. I mean, we don't get to say, it's neutral. We don't get to say it's an abstention. I mean,
No, but-
it's already defined in the no.
And believe me, I don't like this rule. I don't like the 75% bar, and I think it's wrong. But taking up the response that I think they would give, it would be, well, wait a minute. We're not counting it as a no. We're just saying for you to change this rule that the state of Colorado has made the decision through these representatives and the voting and the ballot stuff and all that, that they've said this is so important. We want to set a high bar here. You have to show that 75% of these people want the change, not aren't opposed to it, want the change. And so this rule would say, even if you don't want it, we're going to count you as wanting it. This isn't counting it as a no vote. It's just not counting it as an affirmative vote. That's how an abstention works.
Right. Well, if we had the ability to abstain and it was 75% of members present, then that would be certainly more understandable. I think it would be still a high bar, but that's not the world we get to live in. And I mean, I understand the arguments from the people who wrote up the original open primary law on this, but I just simply disagree that that's what they should be imposing on a private political organization. And now we're just trying to level the playing field, so to speak. I mean, here's the thing: if you don't want this to pass, the opt-out, what I'm referring to, then show up and vote no.
Except that a person right now could look at the law and say, hey, I don't want to go through the rigmarole of this. I'm opposed to a change. I know that if I don't show up, it's not going to happen, or at least my vote won't be counted that way. This proposed amendment seems to want to change the rules on the day of, right? Like you now have to make a different decision than you would make under the law. And I get where you're coming from. I don't think this is flipping the script. I just think I've never seen this anywhere else in democracy. And I've never seen, like in the legislature, Dave, has there ever been a vote taken where if you just don't show up, you're counted as a yes?
Well, there's no apt comparisons. I do know in the Senate that if you fail to cast your vote in the negative, they'll count like a senator. For if you fail to raise your hand and declaratively say no, you're going to be assumed yes.
In the Senate?
In the Senate, right? On third reading, you have to show up. I mean, so if you're excused, you're not going to be counted in the roll. But if you're there, but you fail to raise your hand and say I want to be a no, they're going to assume your vote is a yes.
So this is a little bit different than that because you have to be present. If you're not present, they don't count you as a yes.
True, but even under your analogy, though, it would be a more apt analogy. I mean, there's nothing. I'll grant you that there's no really apt comparison here. Other than that, I think the proponents are viewing it as, look, this is not, if you're not declaratively objecting to this, then we're going to have to assume it this way because we don't want to be constrained by the state's arbitrary assumptions that they've imposed on us.
One other question about that, because you said it's so clearly a violation of our right of association, I presume under the First Amendment. Is there a lawsuit out there that has or is addressing that right now?
Sure. We actually filed lawsuit against the open primary law that would include the opt-out provision yesterday. We filed suit, and we'll be, getting more information out to everyone.
Did it get filed out in Denver District Court?
Yeah, you know what? Yes, it did, but I don't have the specifics. That was really headed by our lawsuit committee and Kevin Lundberg, but we did file it yesterday.
Do you remember who is representing the state party in this?
Yes.
What attorneys?
Yes. We went ahead and went with John Eastman and his partner, and I believe Randy Corcoran is also joining in on it, and we've raised the sufficient startup funds to get them squared away and get the process rolling.
How much is this going to cost?
It's hard to say, but it's certainly going to be a couple $100,000 to get to where we want to be at a minimum.
I presume they had a budget in mind for you. Like, hey, these are the steps. I think this is the calendar I think that's going to take place. Did they give you a proposal in terms of here's how much we think? And no one can ever promise you, but here's how much we think. Or did they flat fee it? Like, we'll do it for X?
Sure. Per the SEC's guidance, we have an independent committee chaired by Lundberg, who's dealing mostly with those logistics. But from what I've seen and what I've been told, I guess the first tranche of where we want to be is about $50,000, and then we're hoping to have some sort of indication from the court by the end of the year on how long this is really going to take and how much of a fight the other side is going to put up. But ultimately, I think what I was told was about $250,000. We should be in that ballpark.
Who's the named party on the other side? I just
Jenna Griswold,
Secretary of State. Okay. And how much have you given so far?
We are going to pay out $25,000 sometime in the next week or so.
And that's a good segue into where are we state party wise with fundraising for the party itself, not the lawsuit effort, but we're at the second half of the year here. Where are we on fundraising?
We're making progress for sure. We had another round of fundraising with major dollar donors. We've given them a detailed written plan, and as you can imagine, there's a little bit of donor fatigue from last cycle's results. So, we are building trust again. We are getting checks are coming in, despite what some of the critics are saying. We can pay our rent. We were actually asked to renew our lease, so we have enough money to finance our operations, and we will have more coming in. It's just taking some time.
The other thing I've heard is, in addition to, hey, can't pay the rent, is that salaries aren't being paid and all that stuff. Is that false? Like, you are definitely paying all the salaries?
Well, I mean, we will. Right now, there's a lot of professionals that are doing this for free because they care more about the party than they do earning a paycheck. And, people like Tom Bjorklund, he's our treasurer.
Yeah.
And again, this is a guy that supported Eric Adlin. We brought him in. He's doing the work of a chief financial officer. He's not a traditional treasurer. He's doing it all, and we're gonna pay him. We're just waiting a little bit to make sure we get our finances in order. We will tell the Central Committee exactly what happened on Saturday with respect to the management of funds and what have you, so people can have a clear picture that, hey, we didn't walk into something that was rosy. We walked into something that really forced our hand to be managing things differently. It's been a triage situation for sure.
How much have we raised so far this year?
You know what? I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but
ballpark.
It's north of 100,000 for sure. But I can certainly have our treasurer, whip up a report and let everyone know.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you get that number, I'd love to know that as well. North of 100 is good. And then do you have a goal like, hey, by the end of the year, as we head into 2024, big year, we want to be at blank?
Yeah. We're hoping to have $500,000 at a minimum by the end of the year, but that's the ballpark area that we're going to be.
Texters texting in on some of this stuff. Question, and that is, can people presume that your support of the amendment also means you support withdrawing from the primary?
Well, I certainly want a closed primary. If they're referring to the opt-out, I think the answer is it remains to be seen. I want to see what the alternative plans are. I know that in principle, I think we should be opting out, but 2 years ago, the Central Committee was very clear. We need a plan that somehow incorporates more Republican input, not less. And I think we need to see what that looks like before we start making commitments. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if I come out one way or the other, I'm going to have to hand over the gavel again. So I'm reluctant to say right now where I would be.
Knowing that a couple of years ago when we went down this road, there was that issue of, hey, having an alternate plan. Are you aware of one that has been produced or is being produced, or alternatives as to what would happen if we withdrew from the primary?
Sure. I think there's a couple ideas that have been floated, but there's one that's certainly been committed to paper and being fleshed out, and that's where we'd have a runoff type system where on the back end, folks, if they want to vote in a contested race, any registered Republican would be able to vote in person within the respective district through the administration of a county party or district party helping to, ensure that voting places are set up with sufficient ballots and folks can come and deposit those ballots.
So no mail-in voting.
No, I don't. No one's offered a mail-in voting option, and I don't think, the consensus from those that are pushing for this, they're not pushing for mail-in options.
Do you know if it would be an extended period of time, given that people have to physically go in to vote, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that kind of thing? Or is it, no, we have 1 day in-person voting period?
Yeah, from the proposal I saw, it was a 1 day in person. You got to show up and vote.
If you can't because you're out of town or you're on active duty or you're on a job, any ideas if it anticipates that and says, hey, here's how you can proxy your vote in or something like that?
I think they're still figuring out how they want to handle that issue. It's been brought up, I know, but I don't think they've provided a detailed response to that yet.
That's interesting. When do you expect that thing gets revealed?
It's going to be revealed well before the September meeting. What we plan to do for September is we plan to offer, the choices of how we would administer an opt-out first. The Central Committee will vote on that, and then once we get into the final vote on the opt-out, everyone's going to be very clear on what the plan forward is.
So to be clear,
if they do that.
To be clear, though, this Saturday is just a vote as to whether or not the party will adopt the amendment, and then that amendment would be triggered in the September meeting on the actual vote to withdraw.
Correct, right. So we're not doing any opt-out votes on Saturday. That's all for September. However, the Bonniwell Amendment will have a potential impact should it pass.
And is that just a straight up 50% change for that amendment? Like it's got to be 50% of the vote?
No, it's 66% of those who show up.
If you had to predict right now, Dave, since you're a proponent for this thing, you think it passes?
I think the momentum is certainly on the side of the proponents, but 66% of members present, that's still a high threshold. So I don't know. I guess I think it's a coin flip right now.
That's interesting. Dave Williams, you've been so generous with your time, my man. Thank you for this. Love to have you back on in a month or so, maybe even before. When's the September meeting?
September 30th.
Okay, plenty of time. Love to get together with you on your calendar, get you back on. I love these conversations, and based on the texts and stuff that we have going on here, people are truly interested in the inner workings of the party because I think they know 2024's ballot is not that far off and want to make sure that we get it right.
Yeah, for sure.
Dave Williams, chair of the state GOP, man, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me, George.
That was Big D, Will, talking about the party stuff. What did you hear there? Like, dislike, things you want to see happen? Interesting based on some of the texts that have come in here. I think there was for me, there was breaking news. I didn't know about some of this stuff taking place. And maybe that's just because the mainstream media hasn't covered it. And as I'm scouring the websites and pages of all this stuff, I didn't see that the lawsuit had been filed yesterday. I didn't see that John Eastman was part of it. Our own Randy Corcoran, a super attorney. I didn't know that he was part of that either. Very, very interesting. What's your feedback there? What is your response to what you heard? Feel better? Feel worse? Not sure? If you're going to go on Saturday, by the way, how are you going to vote on what's called the Bonniwell Amendment? 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to David Williams. He's the chair of the state GOP. I love Dave for a couple different reasons here. Even when I disagree with him, I love that he comes on the air and he answers my questions. And I don't know, it seems like he's transparent and he gives the information. Some of it is brand new to me. Like, I had no idea we filed a lawsuit yesterday. I just didn't see that. I had no idea John Eastman was part of it. I don't even know if he's a licensed attorney here in the state of Colorado. Now, the question is, well, how can he do this if he's not? The short answer is there's something called pro hoc vice, which is a method by which Randy Corcoran, and I'm just using him because that was the other name Dave threw out, Randy could basically vouch for Eastman and say, I'll make sure he complies with all of our special Colorado rules and regs and all that other stuff regarding practicing. And then he could practice here. And it's on a case-by-case basis. You couldn't just vouch for someone for the next 10 years. It's a case-by-case basis. So that's how that happens. But there was some real interesting stuff that came out of there. For instance, it appears that the staff members of the state GOP at this point are working out of passion and commitment for the party and not for a paycheck. And I think that's honorable. I think that's respectable. But that to me feels like an indication of where our finances are. If we've pulled in over 100 grand, and now I feel like an idiot for having not asked what the cash on hand is right now, outside of rent, the lease and whatnot, keeping the lights on, where's the money gone? And maybe it's all gone to leases. And how long can we maintain a staff on passion and commitment? And then some people texted in, and I thought this was super insightful. Well, wait a minute. Why are we paying, $50,000 to attorneys on the road to $250,000? Why aren't they volunteering their time? Why don't they have the passion and the commitment to do this? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know who's taking money and who's not. I don't know what it takes. I know that I have done work pro bono as an attorney, even when I was on the civil side and the defense side. I've done that before, so I know it exists. Why is it not happening here when the staff is working for commitment and passion? I don't know. I think that's a fair question. I wish I had been smart enough to ask that one. Here's some other text, and we'll get to the phone calls, 303-696-1971. Someone asked, how do you fund the runoff? Now, if you didn't hear Dave's answer to, hey, have you seen a proposal for what happens if we withdraw from the primary? Because the primary, as it's constituted now, is open to unaffiliated voters. I'm not a huge fan of that. I mean, I wish Republicans were just picking our team captains, but that's the law as it exists now. And because it's the law, your clerks and recorders, and they're taxpayer funded, and your Secretary of State taxpayer funded, they all have a hand in managing these primary elections. And there's some guarantees, by the way, of integrity and accuracy with those. Please don't give me the Tina Peters nonsense. But what we're talking about now is Dave had an answer that said, hey, I've seen a proposal, and what it would do is say we're going to have one day in person, I presume paper ballots, but one day in person, no mail, no nothing, voting in a runoff type setting. Now, what was unclear to me was, how do you generate the candidates for that runoff? Is there a certain percentage you have to reach at the assembly? I just don't know the answer. But a bigger question, and one of the texters here, is how do you fund that runoff? Who pays for the runoff? And their texts were a series of them. Like, how do you pay for that runoff when you can't pay the staff? I don't know. Another great question. I wish I'd been smart enough to ask Dave, and we can ask him if this Bonniewell thing passes on Saturday. Those questions will be far more relevant and current eventsy. But if it doesn't pass, there's just no way we're going to hit that 75% threshold. I think that was intended in the law. They wanted to create a way out, but a very, very narrow, difficult one to achieve. So the lawsuit gets filed. Maybe if this Bonniewell thing doesn't pass and we're forced to stay into the current primary system, maybe sometime within this year, there'll be some legal action that upends it. I just don't know the answer. I'm fascinated by where this goes and the impact it'll have on the 2024 election. But what did you hear there? 303-696-1971. Frank from Golden, you're on 710. What do you think, sir?
Hey, George, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding, and I think you've outlined it, but I want to make sure. So a lawsuit has been filed with who is a named plaintiff? Is it the Republican Party?
No, it would be Jenna Griswold. And that makes sense to me because as the Secretary of State, it isn't really her. It's just really against the Secretary of State because they're the one in charge of administering these things.
That'd be the defendant, but who is the plaintiff in this? Is it?
Yeah, great question. I should have asked that too. Dang it, Frank. Where were you when I was talking to Dave Williams? Text into the show, man. I'm just one dude with a teeny tiny brain. I don't know. I don't know if it's the state GOP party. I presume it is, since they're the ones that set up this independent expenditure group headed by Kevin Lundberg, former state senator, to run. I presume it's the state GOP that files that lawsuit.
And then, and then it's being, I guess, steered by John Eastman and Randy Corcoran, or in some combination thereof, or something like that.
There may be other attorneys. That wouldn't shock me, but those are the two names D. Will gave us. Yeah.
And then there's at least projected legal costs for the state GOP of $250,000, $50,000 front loaded now to just get the thing off the ground.
That's what he said. Now I couldn't remember. I wrote down 50,000 in my notes, but then I thought, didn't he also say they are just giving them later this week 25,000? So I presume 50 is the retainer to get you started, and they're coming up with half that retainer amount this week. That's a big chunk of money.
And then it is, and the state GOP, there's people basically working for the party, free no pay, but they're managing to pay leases and things like that, and renew leases, I guess. That's what I gathered from the conversation.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. I presume none of those people are working truly for free forever, and I think Dave made that clear, is that he's like, listen, we're going to pay everybody and we're going to pay them what we owe them, but that's down the road. And so my thought is, in addition to knowing how much we've raised, again, this is all rear view mirror. I wish I was better at this kind of talk. I should have asked, what are the accounts receivable? Because that's what it would be, right? It would be an account receivable. You have this debt. What is it?
And all of this is taking place. This lawsuit is basically to try to unscramble the primary system that the legislature changed in 2018 that would allow unaffiliated voters to participate in either party's primary system, right?
I think everything you said is true. The one part I'd like to go back and check was that a vote of the legislature, or did we do that through the ballot? You know what I mean? Like, was it a referred measure that we voted on? I can't remember. I can't remember.
I don't remember how that came around either. And basically, you could get around this. You could build around this unaffiliated problem by 75% of the party membership participation, or not membership, but leadership participation, right?
Yes, I think it's either the Central Committee or the Executive Committee, whatever that one is that has several hundred in it. And you have to achieve a 75% affirmative vote to withdraw from this primary system. And it sounds like that's a huge bar to achieve.
Yeah, it's hard, I'm sure. I mean, especially if you're going to require everybody to be there in person. I mean, I suppose you could do things virtual if you wanted to, but of course there's all suspicions about how that works.
That's right.
So, and the theory being that basically there's a chance here to seed, you could put enemies in the camp of the party otherwise with these unaffiliated, I guess, is the fear here, that would water down your candidate or water up your candidates or something like that.
I do think that the great concern from those who are at the core of the grassroots on this is that allowing unaffiliated voters to play. And I know they talk about Dems switching over to vote, and whether that's happened or not, I'm sure it's happened, but in numbers that make a difference, there's just no evidence of that. There's no polling that shows that that's ever happened. I think the bigger concern is, if you are a hardcore grassroots far-right conservative, you're worried that the more people that vote that don't think like you, the more likely you're going to advance a candidate that doesn't adhere to the principles and values you think. And the case in point would be the people that wanted Hank Schwanger at the assembly didn't get him for the nominee. They got Joe O'Dea, who appealed to a broader coalition of voters. And I think they're trying to say, listen, we don't want that anymore. We want to be able to have more control. And if we had more control, we would generate a better conservative candidate.
Which, yeah, I mean, that's really the fundamental goal here, is
Yes.
to be able to get the candidate that is more aligned with that philosophical outlook. And here's kind of my long way around the bar. And the lawsuit is all based on an idea that you have a freedom of association, which there is no such thing in the Constitution. There's a freedom of speech that it grows out of. So this is my what this boils down to me is that this is kind of why I'm unaffiliated, is that I can't join a group that is so self-destructive and self-immolating as the GOP in this state. And it's obvious here. I mean, you're throwing good money after bad, using attorneys that at least one, not Randy, but the other one has been basically disgraced through the election nonsense. And you're paying them apparently while not necessarily paying people who are doing payable jobs. And this is all a fool's errand to try to get the candidates lined up that you feel as these hardcore far-right people are electable, which they are not. I mean, this is a fool's errand, and it is the party literally lighting itself on fire, and why I'm unaffiliated.
Frank, had you been a Republican before? Have you ever been a registered Republican?
No, I've always been independent. But I'm always conservative on these issues, but I can't join something that's just crazy town.
What would it take?
Ridiculous.
And folks will listen in and they'll be like, well, damn, if Frank's never been on the team, why are we entertaining his thoughts on how the team is run? So let me ask you, what would it take to win you over to put on a jersey? Like, what would you need to see to get you on board?
I guess it's close. I would put on a jersey if there was not this element in the party. And I know that's kind of like, but we're talking about all these things, votes in the negative and votes in the affirmative. That's what it would take, is it would take the party to have weeded the crazies out for me to put on a jersey. And I don't see that happening at all. As a matter of fact, they're watering the crazies in the garden right now. That's what this is. And it's putting itself in a position where you're going to get candidates who are even less electable than what they've presented in the past. And does anybody think the Hank Schwanger type candidate, I love that kind of splice name there, it is an electable candidate? Because if you think that, you're crazy. You're truly crazy.
I wonder, and I get the negative stuff, like, hey, I couldn't support a team like this. But when you look at the party and you say, here's the affirmative steps they could take, this is a party I would want to join, not a party that doesn't do this. I appreciate that. What's the positive thing? Like, if you saw this, you'd be inclined to want to throw in.
That's a very good question, because right now I don't see that in the future here, because I think there's steps that have to be taken before that to get to where you could do something that would make sense. And by that, I mean, you've got to put the kids back at the kiddie table before you're ever going to be able to take an affirmative step in a direction that would make me affiliate. And because right now I don't even see what's on the horizon here, except just continued meltdown, which is bad for the state, because it allows the crazies on the other side to do just like they did this legislative session and will for the next foreseeable legislative sessions. It gives them free reign. It's not a healthy balance of power, because there is no balance at all. It all goes one direction.
Frank, great phone call. Thoughtful. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for getting us going. I want to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to be joined by Janice and everyone else that calls in. Frank's line is open, 303-696-1971. Gay Ribble is the premier realtor. Damn it. Someone always corrects me when I misstate it. Realtor out there. She and the Empower Home team at Keller Williams, they just do top shelf work, and they don't care what your situation is. You don't have to be going out and buying a 7-figure home to get their attention and the best quality service they provide. That's not what they're interested in. Gay is built differently than that. She started with nothing. an adopted kid who has a passion for advancing adoption. Don't you just love that? She grew up in this community. She started a business and a family in this community, and she wants you to thrive in our community. So if you're interested in realtors who get you more money on average than others, sell your home faster on average than others, and can put you into that dream house, even in these complicated times when it comes to real estate and interest rates and financing, there's really only one number to call. It's 833-301-SOLD. 833-301-SOLD. There's no home too small. There's no dream too big. She can help you get in it. Check her out at gayhasthebuyers.com. That's gay, G-A-Y-E, hasthebuyers.com. When we come back, Janice and all the texts and all the other callers at 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Well, there's something happening here, and we're talking about it, getting texts in off of the David Williams. I'm not going to call it explosive, but there was some shocking stuff that came out of there. We've got Janice and others calling in right now, 303-696-1971. The problem is I only have about 25 seconds left until they're going to take it away from us. So we're going to do this at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. This and some other things. But man, did you hear what Dave said during that interview, and how does it strike you? What are your thoughts on the direction the party's taking and what's going to happen this Saturday and beyond? It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's the final hour of 4. Chuck Kirk next, and then we go live and local at 3 with Deb Flora. And then Stephen Tubbs is back per super listener Alexa. He will be back in the saddle today, 4 to 7. My thanks again in the last hour. If you didn't get a chance to hear the interview, you should go back and listen to it on the podcast. David Williams, chair of the state GOP, big meeting this Saturday down at the Rock. Huge church. Well attended down there in Castle Rock. I've been there for a bunch of events and not a ton of them religious events. I mean, most of them non-religious events, but a great venue down there. They're going to hold a vote on a couple different things. One, they talked about things that they would change regarding this national representative vote at the presidential primary, the national convention at the state. And that was all interesting, very interesting. But the biggest thing was what's been called now the Bonniwell Amendment. Chuck Bonniwell of Chuck and Julie, big time lawyer, wicked smart guy, Glendale Chronicle, you know the words. He has crafted this amendment to the bylaws, which would count folks that don't show up to a meeting as having voted in the affirmative for withdrawing from the state primary. Now, I had asked a couple different questions of Dave, and he gave me great answers, by the way. Love to have Dave Williams on because he's transparent and he doesn't run from any of the questions. I think some of the answers are harder than others, and we'll talk about those. Some of them were the money. But our good friend Randy Corcoran here, also on the show, you can hear Randy on the station all the time. Randy cleared up a couple things that I did not know about. So one, the caption of the case is in essence the Colorado GOP versus Griswold, just because she's the Secretary of State. It really isn't about Jenna. In federal district court, that's a big difference. I thought it had been filed in Denver district court, but they've gone to federal district court. That tells me this claim, this freedom of association claim under the First Amendment, they're just going to go right to the big guys. And then I'm interested to know which judge it's going to land in front of too. And then the question of how did we get here, whether or not, because one of the callers, I think it was Frank from Golden, was, hey, did the legislature pass this? And I couldn't remember. I thought that we had seen it on the ballot. Well, Randy cleared that up for us, said Proposition 108 was put on the ballot, and it doesn't sound like it was a legislature referred measure. It sounds like it was an initiative that was launched or funded at least by Kent Theory. And I think he just left the T off of Kent, but Kent Theory, formerly of DeVita, super wealthy guy. He's a guy that has for a long time played around with the structure of our political system with an eye towards, I don't think it's deniable, with an eye towards moderating candidates and representatives. And I think you will also see Kent, and I've reached out to his people to get him on the radio for a couple different things. Dude just doesn't want to go there, which is disappointing. But I think he's also going to be behind. If you see anything about ranked choice voting, RCV, it'll have his fingerprints and his dollars on it for sure. And again, that's an effort to moderate representatives and to moderate candidates. Randy just got back to me, said he'd love to come on. Just so you know, I invited Randy on the show today since we're talking about this. He said he could do it tomorrow, but he's tied up with, my guess is, court business or something this hour. So hopefully we'll get him on tomorrow to talk about this case and the details of it and all that other stuff and who's going to represent the Secretary of State. Typically, it's Phil Weiser. It's the Attorney General's office would represent Jenna Griswold. So this will be real interesting to see how this plays out. 303-696-1971. What did you hear in that interview with Dave Williams? I think the thing that struck me the most was how dire the money situation is. There's no other way to describe it. We can't sugarcoat it. We can be super optimistic that the floodgates are going to drown us in coin here after Saturday's meeting or maybe the September one. I no longer believe that. If you'll recall, and Dave's been so good about coming on every month, at one point there was like $17,000 in the bank. It sounds like Dave on Saturday is going to reveal sort of the straits that they found themselves in after they took over earlier this year. But he says, hey, we think we've raised about $100,000 over the course of the year. That's real money. But it sounds like they don't even have enough. And this was the startling thing to me. They don't pay staff. Staff is at this point just accumulating credits towards pay that they're going to get once the money comes in. And so right now it sounds like the good folks that are out there crushing it on behalf of the GOP are doing so out of passion and commitment and not pay. That's troubling. You can pay the lease, but you can't pay the peeps. That's kind of a big one. I'm interested to see where the dollars go. And I think we were a lot more optimistic a few months ago about where those the bank account would be today. And we're just not there. Still wants to try to have $500,000 raised by the end of the year. I guess I should have. I feel like an idiot for not having asked the question. What have we spent it on thus far? 303-696-1971 is the number. Janice from Walsenburg. Janice, thanks for the call. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm appreciate these new people that got elected into the Republican Party, and I was listening about when Dave Williams come in. He was told they had $125,000 and it all disappeared kind of strangely.
Yeah.
So he spent some time trying to find out where it went. I'm a fan of Randy and this Eastman guy. I think people need to do more research to see that he wasn't the discrediting somebody's talking about. I don't know whether that's
well. Some folks have chimed in here on the Eastman thing and have said, "Hey, isn't this dude potentially facing prosecution for violation of some federal laws?"
Well, in California.
Yeah, maybe it's in California. Yeah, I'm sure Democrats in California. But if the dude's disbarred, I don't know where else he's licensed. I don't know how he practices law. If he gets, and I don't know that that's on the table, but that was something that I thought I'd read here, was that he was facing potential disbarment or at least discipline in California. Yeah. But let me ask you, Janice, are you concerned at all that we just haven't raised enough money over the past however many months that we can pay staff?
No, not really, because the new administration has just come in. They're looking over what's going on. They were trying to run down the bank accounts scattered around everywhere. And Casper Stockman had a good idea. He said every Republican that's registered could send $10 a month and we'd have enough money to do anything we wanted.
Right. But why would they do that? Like, what is it they would expect?
If you're going to be a Republican and care about what's going on, you better step up now.
Yeah, but can you care about what's going on as a Republican and not be in favor of what the state party is doing?
I'm in favor of what they're doing because they're doing something, and what's been in the past hasn't exactly worked.
Well, I've heard that before too, and that is, hey, what we've been doing in the past didn't work, so let's just try something new. And Janice, I appreciate the call on this. Where do you think we're going that you like that will make a positive difference for us? What's that thing that we're doing? Is it the withdrawing from the state primary?
Yeah, I like that because these independents, unaffiliated people, they can't make up their mind what they want, so let's give them a chance.
Well, what if they can make up their mind? They just don't want to be a Republican. What if they agree with 90% of what the Republicans say, but not enough to want to put on the jersey?
Well, I don't know about that. You got to step up at some time. And they were complaining because Dave Williams asked the independent party to chip in, and see what we could do to get together. And I thought that was a good idea. Let's talk to all these little parties and see what their ideas are and see if we can pull them into our party.
Hold on. You think we're going to pull the libertarians into the Republican Party?
Yeah, libertarians.
Why would libertarians abandon their party and join the Republicans? And I didn't hear him say that. What I heard him say in the past calls, Janice, was that he was trying to get them to agree to not run, to not run candidates that would compete with ours.
Well, most of their ideas kind of agree with ours, so, and they're not getting much traction. So, everybody's.
Yeah. What do you think the reason for that is, that they keep running candidates against, or at least in favor of what they think versus what we think?
Well, it's like in Europe. Every country has 100 little parties, and they make little coalitions.
Yeah, but they're parliamentary. We don't do it that way because we're not a parliament. I mean, we are a winner takes all sort of approach to each of these seats. So making a coalition with another party is largely irrelevant to governance. It really, I think where I see Dave going is to try to encourage the libertarians in these competitive districts like the 8th CD to not run someone who might suck the needed votes away from a Republican nominee winning that seat. Does that make sense?
Well, they did. What is that? When a woman had almost won, they took a lot of votes from her, I think.
Yeah, it was Barb Kirkmeyer, who would have been great.
Yeah, Kirkmeyer.
Yeah, Kirkmeyer would have been great. Let me ask you this. Do you think that a process that would see just the assembly, and I know Dave's talking about another alternate, but just the assembly generate our nominees, which means if you don't make it to the county assembly, you don't have any say on who represents the Republicans on the ticket. Would you prefer that?
Well, let's see. I was a delegate a long time ago, and that's what they were doing back in the old days. It worked out pretty good, I thought.
You think so? And the reason I think it worked out pretty good in the old days, so to speak, was that there wasn't an opportunity to expand voter participation. I mean, you had to be the hardest core of the hardcore to set aside so much time to get to go. You don't just get to show up to the assembly, right? Like you got to earn your way there by going through the precinct caucus on some Tuesday night when hopefully you don't have a conflict with kids' sports or school or work. And then from there, you go on to the assembly. And if you go to the county assembly, depending upon how they run it, that's the gatekeeper to getting to go on to things like the state Senate thing or the Congress thing or the U.S. Senate thing or the DA thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's a bit of an obstacle course.
That's right. If you give a damn about anything, you show up and participate and, interact with your fellow citizens.
Well, Janice, what about the idea that I give a damn, but logistically, I can't pull off 3 meetings at night or on weekends to go do this? What do you tell those people?
Well, I don't know. There's always cell phones.
Well, what is the cell phone? You can't vote by cell phone.
Call people up and ask people what they want to vote.
Wait a minute. What do you mean? I'm talking about if you want to be at the assembly, Janice, the way you did. If you happen to have a conflict during that precinct caucus day or the county assembly day, chances are you don't get advanced on. Is that fair?
Well, you pick somebody else to take your place if you can't make it. That's the choices that we had.
Yeah, but you don't get to pick someone. If you can't show up, your vote doesn't get cast. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if you're not there, you can't get advanced on. And that means you don't get to have a say in who gets to represent you. That's my concern with this approach is we withdraw from the primary. Great. We've cut off the unaffiliated. We've also cut off about 99% of all other Republicans in the state of Colorado. Doesn't that feel like a nose
don't really
to spite?
care about anything because they never come to anything and vote on anything. Really.
Do you think that that's the only measure of caring is whether or not you can participate in the assembly? What if you go to the precinct caucus because you're hell bent on going to these assemblies and you just don't get elected? Does that mean you don't care? Because those people would get cut off from voting too.
Well, you talk to the people that in the community. That's what we do at our local meetings is we all get together and
but Janice, if you showed up to your precinct caucus and said, I want to go to the state assembly, and it turns out there's good turnout that day, and your neighbors get voted to go to the state assembly, but not you, would you then think, I don't deserve to have input over who the nominee is because I don't care? Or would you say, well, this is the way the system is?
No, I wouldn't. Why would I?
Well, that's
these people are in the party. They're representing Republicans. Supposedly, we're thinking the same thing. Well, similar, close.
But you wouldn't mind then not getting to vote on who the nominee was under those circumstances. You don't think you would deserve a vote.
Well, when the nominee comes up, then you get to vote for him.
No, but you wouldn't get to have any say over who the nominee was. Is that okay with you?
Well, all kinds of people run for office, and you don't get to say who they are. They just decide. And the party tries to pick the best ones.
Yeah, but right now the party is you and I. We get to vote on it. Yes, there's unaffiliated voters. I had no doubt about it. But you and I get to decide. Under a scheme where we withdraw from the primary, unless there's an alternative put in place, you and I could be cut off from that process. And we're just stuck with whoever this handful of people that have advanced through the assemblies decide on. Is that what you want to see out of the party? Do you think that makes a candidate more likely to win?
My brother ran for state senator twice. My dad ran for a state representative.
Okay.
Because they were Republicans and we're from the county down here that's almost all Democrats, they didn't get elected. But they were agreeable candidates. Nobody had big objections about because they couldn't vote for them or pick them out. They just decided they wanted to run, went around and asked everybody and jumped in the race.
Janice, last question. Why do you think we're struggling to raise money as a party?
Well, I don't know. The big donors have all left, so they're getting money from all us little people.
Well, Dave said he had
We're
meetings
sending
with
as
the
much
big
as we
donors.
can.
Have you given money to the state party?
Yep.
When?
Last election.
Okay, but
Come
I'm
on.
talking about since Dave was put in as chairman by the people that voted for him. Have you given money to the state party?
Not yet, but I'm waiting to see what they're going to do. I'm planning on donating.
What's going to be the deciding factor for you?
Well, the Republicans.
I know, but when will
Everything that the Democrats
you
are doing.
decide whether to give a check to the state party, not to a candidate? When will you decide about whether to give money to the state party?
When I get enough to give, basically.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate that. Janice, thanks for the call. As always, I appreciate that. 303-696-1971. Janice's line is open. I want to tell you about Dan Kaplis because Dan isn't just a friend of the show, friend of the station, friend of mine. Dan was also my boss about 16, 17 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember me talking about that, but I was making the transition from being a DA out in the 1st Judicial District out there in Golden to private practice, to the civil world, where I got paid a ton more money than I was making as a prosecutor. It turned out money wasn't what drove me, and I went back to prosecution. But in the interim, I learned how to do civil cases under Dan's mentorship and tutelage. And I can tell you firsthand, because I tried cases while I was in Dan's shop, including with his current partner, Babar Wahid, tried Babar's first case. This is a guy who is, one, fearless, two, he is determined. And that determination stems from his commitment to people of all walks of life, all backgrounds, doesn't care what your ideology is, doesn't care about your size, your height, your political affiliation, color, really doesn't care about any of those things. Cares about, are you a victim? And if you are a victim, if somebody has hurt you, whether it's on the road or a business or whatever it is, give him a call at 303-770-5551 and sign up with the best. Sign up with someone who will get you the most amount of justice possible under our current civil justice system. 303-770-5551. DanKaplislaw.com. That's Dan Kaplis, Kaplis, law.com. Dude's a superstar. Be part of the team. And then you'll just end up being like a walking billboard for Dan, because the folks that have had Dan, they talk about it all the time. Oh, I hired Dan. He was great. Oh, I hired Dan. He was great. Be part of that crowd. Give him a call. 303-770-5551. Here's some texts that have come in. Jacqueline here. George, Janice is a woman after my own heart. She's a good old cowgirl. Here's another one. This is sort of unrelated. Today is Colorado Day, and the U.S. Space Force will remain in Colorado Springs. How about acknowledging some positive things? As you know, in the 6 o'clock hour, we talked about Colorado Day. But you're right. The Space Force is staying here in Colorado, and I think we have to give credit where credit is due. If we were going to punch Michael Bennett over the fact that he didn't well defend the Space Force's headquarters here in Colorado, if we were going to punch Hickenlooper for not holding hostage some of the promotions and advancements and bills and nominations to get the Space Force here, if we were going to be upset that Biden was on the verge of sending it somewhere else, I think we have to acknowledge President Biden's Department of Defense made the decision to keep Space Force in Colorado. That's a huge win for Colorado. But here's what's killer. If it was politics that was going to cost us the Space Force, and that's true, there was no other reason for the president to pull it out from Colorado and send it to Alabama, except that Alabama is Trump country, Colorado is not. And Biden just did the reverse. He just cut off Tuberville in Alabama. Remember, Tuberville's the one that's stalling the advancement of all these promotions out there at the Senate. He just took it away from Alabama and gave it back to a state that has a Democrat governor and 2 Democrat senators and a 5-3 majority Democrats in the House of Representatives. So I don't think he's making the decision any less for politics than Trump did. But we got to acknowledge that it's better for Colorado to have the Space Force here. And who gets credit for it? The folks that made the decision, right? If we're going to be principled, if we're going to have integrity in our positions, we have to acknowledge that as well. So there it is. There's your positive look right here. Here's some more text. It is his amendment, and you are debating the issue. Why not have Chuck on to explain the amendment? I'm actually going to be talking to Chuck tomorrow on his podcast. Here's another one. The more conservative candidate in Colorado will not get elected. How profanity stupid is the Republican Party? I don't know if that's true, but the process matters to me. And if we're going to create a process that circles the wagons, cuts off 99 point whatever percent of Republicans, and I think Janice's position is probably one a lot in the grassroots believes in, and that is, hey, if you can't muster the time and energy to set your schedule in life in a way that allows you to participate in these multiple events that we're going to call assemblies and conventions, then yeah, you shouldn't have a voice in this. That's 1980s thinking. That's not 2023 thinking. I've been to these assemblies, but I was an active politician, an active Republican. And I know a lot of people have done that, but my neighbors are strong conservatives. They don't have the time to do it. They don't have the wherewithal to do it. And they don't have the interest in going through 3 multi-hour things over the course of a month or so just to get to have the say over something that we can accomplish with a ballot. So if the issue is, can we cut off unaffiliated and just do a vote of Republicans? I don't know. It seems to me like that would be an easier path to go. I also think it would be a little foolish, given that we're going to go back to those unaffiliated who have now had the chance to vote in the Democrat primary and tell them we now care about your opinion. Here's Clyde in Denver. I've been a Republican my whole life. We have traitors like Dick Wadhams dragging us down. I support the withdrawal. Traitor? Dude, come on. Think about, Clyde, think about the use of the term traitor. We throw around words now like they're meaningless. Like we just throw labels at people. Traitor, treason, treachery. That is the path to extinction and irrelevance for the Republican Party. You disagree with Dick Wadhams? I'm sorry, man. I agree with Dick. Dick's been doing this for a long time. And if you're like, when's the last time he had a win? The last time we had a win was the last time Dick had a win, okay? So if you're looking for some basis to say maybe we ought to pay attention to some of the lessons that Dick has learned and some of the things that he sees, there's one right there. You don't have to agree with him. But to suggest somehow that a guy who disagrees with you is a traitor, that's fighting words, man, isn't it? To call someone a traitor. And remember by the boot barn, they had the truck and the video, and I think Aaron Wood was there and all this stuff. And dudes are out there talking about treachery and treason. And how in the world is that purification process, that vilification of those who you don't agree with within the party, going to make us stronger? I'm telling you, we are rapidly approaching, and this is my great concern. It doesn't have to happen. I'm not convinced it'll happen yet. We are rapidly approaching minority party status. And I think we're approaching insolvency. My God, we just committed apparently $50,000 on a road to $250,000 to attorneys who can't make the same commitment to work pro bono the way the staff is. I don't know. Maybe there's costs associated with it. Maybe they're working for free and we don't know it. I'd love to know. But we're now at the point of asking our hardest core Republicans who work on the structure of the party to work for free until we can figure out a way to pay them. I don't know. I'm worried. I'm very worried. It's not that we can't fix this. It just doesn't look like we're on the path to do it yet. Here's Michael from Denver. You know what? Let's do this. I got more texts coming in, and I'm going to read those. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. I'll get to more of the text when we come back. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. We are in the last two segments of the August the 1st Colorado Day show right here on number 303-696-1971. Did you know that by the end of the month, that'll be 30 August, the day before the last day, we're at the first day, we're going to be hosting the third annual cigar night with Dennis Prager. That's at 710knus.com. That's where you get the tickets. The event itself is going to be at the View House in Centennial. I was there last year. That was my first one at the second annual. It was pretty awesome, man. Dennis was out there, very accessible, did a lot of stage work up there. You get to do the premium cigars, the carving station, hors d'oeuvres, your first beverage. The cigars are really good. I've smoked cigars in the past. I'm not an aficionado of those. I feel the same way about wine. Like the gap between Boone's Farm Delicious Apple and a legit rosé, couldn't tell you. You could pour it, it wouldn't matter to me. I feel the same way about the cigars. Like people are like, oh, that's a Monte Cristo. I'm like, oh, a delicious sandwich, but what are you doing making cigars? That, to me, the difference between that and a Swisher Sweet, I just haven't been trained to know the difference. So you're going to get the chance, though, especially if you have that palate. This is the place to be. Dennis is going to be here. It turns out, I just heard word that the station has decided to risk ending its relationship with Dennis Prager by allowing me to have considerable stage time, introducing him and talking to guests and all that stuff. If you were there last year, you know that was a huge mistake. 710 is doubling down on the mistake. They're saying basically, hold my cigar and watch this. So check it out at 710knus.com. That's the Dennis Prager Cigar Night on August the 30th. Mark it in your calendar now. Here, getting back to some of the text. And here's what we're talking about, just to remind you. Had Dave Williams on in the 8 o'clock hour. Love having Dave on. Very transparent, answers the questions, always willing to come on. And he talked to us about a bunch of things, including the state of the party. And the things that I did not know were the state filed a lawsuit yesterday that our friend Randy told us was captioned, in essence, Colorado GOP versus Griswold, because she's the Secretary of State, filed that in U.S. District Court. I'm hopeful that things move in U.S. District Court much more quickly than they do in state court, and that is being helmed not just by Randy, but by John Eastman as well. And that Dave thinks that the dollar amount that's been pitched to them to see this thing through to the end zone is about $250,000. That's a lot. And it's a lot for a state party that Dave revealed has probably taken in $100,000 over the course of the year, but doesn't have cash on hand enough to pay the staff currently. The staff is working out of commitment and passion and not for dollars. I just don't know how long you can sustain that model, because I don't know a lot of these people that are independently wealthy that are like, I'll work for free because I believe in that's tough. That's tough. So my hope is they're able to turn on that spigot. Dave says they got some meetings coming up in the future here, and that they're able to get the money flowing in. Even Janice, who love to hear from Janice. Janice has said, hey, I like Casper Stockham's $10 a month from every single Republican one. That will never, ever, never, ever, never happen. If you're a Republican, you don't believe in just throwing $10 a month at any organization forever. That's just how conservatives are. But even Janice hasn't, and maybe it's a function of ability, but she said, look, jury's still out. I want to see what the party does. I want to see who the candidates are. So I don't know if we're going to, at the grassroots level, be able to dig ourselves out of this financial hole, because that's what it feels like we're at right now. Now, my hope is they're able to attract the big donors and get the dollars in, but whatever. Here's a text. Your wine comments are disappointing. And you've spelled it as comments, which are probably a cross between condiments and comments. So your wine condiment comments are disappointing. I just don't have a refined palate. Beer, I feel a little bit differently about. I can tell you the difference between a Schlitz and a IPA and some microbrew. I can do that. But the wine thing, it just escapes me. And you know what the problem is? The colors aren't different enough. You know what I mean? If you made some of them blue, I'd be better at picking them. Here's another text. Is it me, or isn't the irony priceless that the Colorado Republican Party is now running under socialist principles, or maybe communist? Either way, working for free because they believe in the party, meanwhile paying lawyers to take up a case they will most likely lose. And they spelled it as loose. Sad. Look, I think there's a legitimate question there as to, can the attorneys work pro bono? And if not, why not? Like if this is something that's all about passion and commitment and doing the right thing, until we get the money to pay the staff who are there, all the time, full time, maybe we don't pay the attorneys. I don't know. I mean, look, I've been an attorney. I've worked for free before. You'd much rather be paid, believe me, but I've done it on cases where I thought it was the right thing to do. No joke. I took some cases for free, even recently trying to turn down money because I'm like, no, I believe in it. That's fantastic. Here's one. The caucus system makes the candidates unelectable. Wadhams is the most successful. Also, the time spent at caucus and assembly could be better spent ballot harvesting. Now, that's an interesting twist on that. I do think the assembly and the caucus system has value. I do think that when you find through this process the most dedicated, the most available, discretionarily available people who want to fight for the party, that matters. And they play an outsized role in their influence just by being available and showing up. That part's true, but not to the exclusion of other Republicans. I mean, that's the part that I struggle with. But if you're a candidate out there, you want to identify these people. You want to find these people and say, hey, I know you're the kind of person that would take time out of the weekend to go spend 3 or 4 hours down at the World Arena in Colorado Springs. Could you walk a precinct for me? That's interesting. Maybe we should find them and use them better for the ballot harvesting stuff. It's intriguing to me, the direction that we're going and whether or not it will generate a better outcome. Now, I did not ask Dave this. I should have given him an opportunity to comment, but we just had too many other good things to talk about. There's that National Review article. And if you haven't read this thing, it's called The Quiet Collapse of 4 Key State Republican Parties. It's from 1 week ago yesterday. So a week ago Monday. It's by a guy named Jim Garrity. And he highlights 4 states that their state parties seem to be on the ropes. There's Arizona, there's Minnesota, Michigan, and Colorado. And this guy is not favorable to Dave. It's hard to know if he is, I don't know, if he's just biased against Dave or if this is a critical approach. But these are some of the things that get cited out of this article. Let me read to you some of this. In the wake of the vote in Congress to raise the debt ceiling, Dave delivered a strident attack on all Republicans who voted for the measure, and specifically his former primary opponent, Republican U.S. Representative Doug Lamborn. In a blast email, he basically called Lamborn a liar and a hypocrite and said Colorado Republicans are fed up with saying anything politicians like Doug Lamborn. This guy's take on it is this is not only wildly inappropriate for a party chair, but seems utterly unmoored from any serious strategy to build a robust statewide election-winning organization. In fact, he included a plea for donations at the end of the anti-GOP mail by touting his efforts to put the Democrats on defense. Tough one. That's a super tough one, right? Like, I don't like an attack on Dave by someone who isn't us in the state. Like they don't have that view. But it's hard to disagree with the idea that on the one hand, we're trying to build a robust, well-funded party. And on the other hand, we're still sniping at each other. I mean, you got guys texting in, Clyde, taking shots at our friend Dick Wadhams saying he's a traitor. That's just gonzo wrong. Not only is it wrong, what's the point in saying it? What's the point in even putting it out there? Here's some other text. Rick Wyatt, I think it's Rich is probably who you mean. Rich Wyatt and John Eastman, the Outlaw Party, could be. Repubs need to another text. Repubs need to challenge the libs' ideas as to why their ideas are better and door knock, not rearrange rules on who gets to vote. People respond to solid ideas and outreach, not backdoor deals. I agree with all that stuff. But let me remind you, the Democrats crushed 2018 for 2 big reasons. One is, I believe that since we have legalized marijuana, we have seen a drastically changing demographic. The voter base is different. I can't tell you that it's all related to people coming to Colorado to smoke marijuana. I'm just telling, temporally speaking, that outcome in 2012 led to, in my opinion, a much broader and more accelerated shift across our demographics in the state, election-wise. The other thing is, don't forget, we have a dude who's almost a billionaire in the Capitol. Mr. I Feel Your Pain, Jared Polis, who has been rich from day one, single-handedly funded his own organization to become governor of the state of Colorado. He had a much bigger door knocking, get out the vote effort than even the Democrat Party did. But it's that rising tide lifts all boats kind of mentality. Griswold, Weiser, Young. If you don't know who Dave Young is, get in line, man. Nobody does. He's the state treasurer. But those people, all the Democrats, benefited from the fact that this dude shelled out a ton of money for exactly what this texter said. And that is the get out the vote effort, the door knocking effort. Those are the things that make a difference. How are we going to fund that? I mean, he didn't do it. It's not volunteers. In fact, somebody asked, my God, who was it? I think it was Ted Trimpa. Somebody asked Ted Trimpa, how do you find all the volunteers to go knock on the doors and do all this other stuff? And I think it was Ted. If I'm wrong, hopefully someone will correct me. Ted said, we would not rely upon volunteers for such an important job. They pay their door knockers. Doesn't that feel incredibly and ironically Republican? You want a good job done? You don't look for volunteers. You pay people to do it. We can't even pay the people that we promised to pay to do the job. How are we going to fund a robust get out the vote effort? And I don't think we're going to do it just on passion. I don't think we're going to do it just on commitment. And I walked doors, by the way. I walked doors in a municipal election out in Aurora. So I'm one of those guys. I just don't think it's going to happen. Hey, listen, I got to cut away for a final break. I don't want to do that, though, till I tell you about QC Kinetix. True to my word, and Billy can back this up, every break so far on today's show, I've knocked out 10 shoulder crackling push-ups, and I've noticed a twinge, or is it tinge? A tinge of pain in my left elbow as I've done it. So I'm going to monitor myself. I'm going to keep doing it, by the way, because I'm a dude, and I fight through the pain, even if it means longer damage to myself. You know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a guy. But I start to think in terms of, man, if I really get something seriously wrong here, my options are going to be go to the doctor and either take pills. I hate pills. Stop using it. I don't want to stop using it. I don't want to get all docile. I want to keep using it. Or go in and have somebody cut you open and move things around. I've already done that. Don't want to do that either. Here's an option. How about QC Kinetix? How about regenerative medicine? How about a needle, an injection? Boom, in, out, bye-bye. And you're back on your feet doing the things you want to be doing. That's because they use you to cure you through regenerative medicine. And they've been doing it across the country. They're not just in the Denver metro area. These folks are everywhere. And they've chosen to reach out to you to say, hey, come be part of this solution for you. Let us help you live a happier, pain-free life. All you have to do is go to qckinetix.com to find out more. But I wouldn't rely on just that information. I wouldn't, not on something medical. You might talk to your doctor, but how about call local medical professionals at a local number, 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. That's 303-900-8986. That's QC Kinetix. There are more texts coming in, and we have lines open if you'd like to chime in here before we go. What's going on with the party? Are you supportive? What's going to happen Saturday? Are we pulling out of the primary? Are we passing the Bonnewell Amendment? 303-696-1971. George Brauchler on the George Show at 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Just a small town girl. It's actually just a small town me. George Brauchler grew up in a place called Lakewood, Colorado, a city as old as I am. You can do your Google research. Finishing off this hour and the show. It's the August 1st. Happy Colorado birthday to you. Happy Colorado Day to you. A couple more texts here that we've got. People are starting to sour on recreational marijuana, except Denverites maybe. There has to be a middle ground on legal psychotropic drugs for all and criminalizing it. But yes, I agree. Colorado Republicans have major funding issues. That be true. Another one from our friend Janet, I believe. Or no, this is Jacqueline from Nebraska. Here it is. Well, people are so sensitive now, especially men. When did they wear their emotions on their cuffs? Yeah, that happens. The idea of pulling out of the primary disenfranchises all who don't get elected as a delegate. That's what I was trying to tell Janice. Perhaps, though, it would get those on the sidelines to be more active. It might. It might spur some people to be more active. But honestly, I'm not sure we need to go back into that. A handful of people make the decision for everybody else in the Republican Party. Now that we've had a taste of the ability to vote from home and do these things, I'm interested to know how we maintain the integrity of the process if, as Dave said, there's a proposal out there to have voting take place almost like a runoff, he said, which tells me you have to go through the assembly. You cannot get to the ballot without going through the assembly, which is not the way the rules work right now, not the way the law works. That you have to do that, and then we could have some kind of a runoff thing, and that runoff would be predicated on having various voting places out around the state, and you'd have to show up in person on one day. What do you do if you're working that day, or you're deployed, or you're on vacation, or your kid takes ill, or how do you accommodate those things? I mean, if you did it over the course of a week, maybe it'd be different or something, but I'm interested to know because I'm worried about the health of the party. I think we've got a bunch of great ideas that are largely falling on deaf ears. We can't get them to the ears to begin with. But one last thing, there was a woman sentenced for driving with heroin in her system and her kid in the car, and she killed a young woman in Douglas County walking through the intersection with her boyfriend. She was sentenced to 20 years in the Department of Corrections. I just need you to know how fake that is and why we need true sentencing reform. That woman is likely to spend as little as 6-ish years in the Department of Corrections for that killing, because it's a non-crime of violence, and at about 1/3 of the period of time, she'll become parole eligible. So maybe 6 years in the Department of Corrections for killing another human being because she had heroin in her system and her kid in the car. That's just wrong. That is not justice. We'll continue to beat that drum right here. You stick around. It's Deb at 3, Stefan at 4. Billy and I will be back tomorrow at 6 a.m. right here in the saddle. Thanks to Dave Williams. Tomorrow, Randy Corcoran, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.